Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on
edition of Between the Headlines. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. As you may be aware, today is the eve of the general and presidential elections in Liberia. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we are expecting Liberians to go to the polls and elect senators, representatives, and of course, their leaders, the president. So tonight, we're going to be looking at the various players in these elections. How have they done so far, and what do we expect from them tomorrow? That's Tuesday. What will things look like tomorrow? We're going to talk about all that, and of course, we're going to talk about the violence that has erupted in Monrovia on the eve or days leading to the elections. With me to do this, I have the political bulldog, that's the host of the Hour of Politics, Mr. Ansony. Sieh. Mr. Sieh, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thank you. It's good to be here. It's the eve of election. Let's talk politics.
Let's talk. Who else can do this besides Mr. Adman Salif? He's our governance advisor, consultant, and analyst here. Mr. Salif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm looking forward to a very good discussion. Let's do it.
Thank you. Let me welcome a former board chairman of EULA, that Mr. James Nan Lassa is also a former TLA member, Republic of Liberia. Mr. Lassa, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Good to be back.
Let me welcome the host of FOL Marketplace. That's the place we talk about business, finance, economics. That's Mr. Gabriel Tabito M. Carter. Mr. Carter, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to having a great discussion.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Mr. Ja Nimne Blamo, the man who writes almost every day, and he sent his stuff in our mailboxes, analyzing current political issues. Mr. Blamo, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be on this program always, and we look forward to a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Let me welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Wherever you are joining us from, we say welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is the place where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. And before we even go further into our discussion today, let me remind you that violence erupted in Liberia. And I don't know why, but these were some scary scenes. It started a week or so ago in Lofa, and now Monrovia. I will play just short clip because this video footage is very gruesome. I don't want to have nightmare tonight. So let me start with the one that happened in Monrovia. I don't want to get to that part where they are literally killing somebody in the street, beating the person to death, and it's just graphic, too gruesome. What's going on? What's happening in Monrovia, Mr. Sieh? I know you watch it. I just want you to paint a picture for our panelists tonight.
Dennis, when I watched the video, and I think this may be the experience of many people who watch it, it took me as far back as our dark days. That is how you saw the streets of Monrovia. And you will see soldiers armed, and the noise would be about someone being killed, someone being beaten, someone being tied. And citizens would just stand by, helpless, and not being able to intervene. And the individuals who has been manhandled is left at the mercy of those who are meeting the violence against that individual. And for us to have gone through that, and then we started enjoying peace, and we started having elections, and now this has surfaced. I didn't think that we will have to come to this place again, that Liberians will exhibit this kind of behavior again against their own brothers and sisters. Of all the battles that we saw in the street, I thought we have learned a lot from those mistakes, from those evils that were done, to our brothers and sisters. I mean, to see that in the name of politics, and they're doing this for political leaders who don't even know them. Political leaders who will not even change anything in our country. Some of them have no vision. And these are the ones, for whom they are killing and beating their own brothers and sisters. I really don't have stomach for it. I don't know how to make sense of it. It just tells us that we are in a terrible place as a country. And then maybe Lassa can help us to make sense of this. I'm not too intelligent for this one, Dennis.
Mr. Lassa, you remember of the Transitional Assembly, TLA, right? And this was during the days of President Taylor. And that's the time, we were just coming out of war. What's happening in Monrovia, and what does that tell you?
Yeah, Dennis, when I was in the TLA, it was a 5-member council that was ruling, and I was, we had to play a role to make positive impact in terms of bringing warlords together and trying to make peace, and bring about understanding and confidence building. Those days, there was no trust. So like Ansony was saying, to tell you the truth, I myself, it was really sad seeing that happening. Often I have had to be reminded that the generation of today in Liberia didn't mainly experience the war. So when I try to attribute what is going on in the country to the fact that they have gone through the war, I'm often reminded that no. They are very, very young. By the time they were born, the war had already finished, or they were very little not to even remember. But then the question is, Dennis, where is the tendency coming from? The violent tendency, where is it coming from? Where is the root? What is the root cause? So that is a question to be answered. When we were coming up before the war, if at all, the fact is that they were not born or they were very young during the war, and so they shouldn't even remember where is the tendency coming from. Dennis, you and I, although I'm much older than you, but when we were young coming up, I never ever saw something like that. So where is the violence coming from? It's certainly from the political rhetoric, the polarization, mobilization, counter mobilization based on self-interest. You have incumbent body of officers and people who have vested interests, and you have impending or what others would call opposition or potentially incoming government who are also bent on seeing themselves in power. Whether these forces are the ones really injecting such in a sentiment is something that we have to look at. But it is sad for the country. We are just about to go into election within hours. Actually, today is election day in Liberia, and for that to be happening points to the fact that the society is very magical and more needs to be done. But it is sad.
Mr. Salih, why is this happening?
Well,
We
it's
saw one in Lofa, now it's in Monrovia, and young people, somebody saw maybe as young as 19, 17 years old, killing people, beating people to death. Why?
Well, why? Because we haven't healed. We haven't really experienced a national therapy of sort. We as a country, as a society, are very traumatized still from the violent years of conflict. Additionally, our system of governance and government haven't worked well. We have, what we see today points to things beyond what we're seeing in the street. Really, it points to the culture of post-war culture in the society. It points to a lack of our ability to really get back on track on all those social indicators, education, civic education, and sort of civic governance, so to speak, right? So for example, a society that has experienced mature democracy is able to engage in political discourses, is able to share ideas and share the ideas in the public space without necessarily resorting to violence. Now, this is not to say political or electoral violence is unique to Liberia. Certainly not. Here in the United States, we saw the kind of bellicose rhetoric during the election, and when Donald Trump ran first for president. Even in the 2020 election, was it 2020 just the election that brought President Joe Biden to office. We saw some of that. In Kenya, we saw what happened in 2007 when, that kind of election led to violence. There are flashpoints during the election, whether it's ethnic, whether it's just some political actors that are stoking violence, their rhetoric is inflaming, it's inflammatory, vitriolic and all of that. Those things happen. But for our specific case, I like to argue that it's really beyond just what we saw in Lofa, what we saw in Grand Jide, and what we saw on the Japan freeway. It points to our failure in a number of ways that societies are supposed to be functioning. We're not there yet. Those young people you talk about, those were wartime babies. Those are 1990s, post-1990 babies. They haven't really experienced the discipline you and I experienced. It used to be it took the village to raise the child, right? In the community, you go play football, you misbehave, your uncle will whip you, your dad's friend will whip you, the neighbors will whip you, and so on. But that doesn't happen in Liberia these days, unfortunately. And the school system is failing. The family unit is not as functional as it used to be. We like to think there's just people being together, but it's really, to me, broader than we like to think.
Well, Mr. Blamo, is any elder home?
Well, I agree with Mr. Salih. We have a huge political inexperience in Liberia. I don't agree with the punishment that we have exerted on people from the past, but elections are divided into three parts. There is the pre-voting, there is the voting, and there's the post-voting. In the pre-voting, where you have the electoral framework is set and developed, boundaries are defined, then we have nomination, we have voter education. All those things are lacking in Liberia. And then we have a whole group of kids who are unemployed and are children of the war. And these are all possible victims to the political actors. They are very easily influenced. And the level of political immaturity is as such that people do not know how to disagree in non-violent ways. So the risk factor that we see that is not just limited to Liberia, as Mr. Salifa pointed out. It is expected. We have to grow politically. We are not there yet. And our political parties are not firmly democratically established. So they release rhetorics to the public, and the public do not know how to channel these rhetorics. They don't have set disagreements. So what we have is what we have designed. We have exactly the system that we have. Until there is improvement in our system, we will continue to see this, and we pray that we will move beyond it with elections after elections. And hopefully it will be done in the counties where people will have local elections and be able to move their experience from a county base to a national base. But every 6 years or 4 years, we look for a messiah and we throw rhetorics at suffering people. And they internalize these things in the wrong way. So I think that it's a matter of growth.
Thank you, Mr. Glambo. And Gabriel, we stay asking the question, what is responsible for these kind of violence that we see?
Anthony, thank you. I think that is a great question. For me, I think every one of the the panelists here actually touched on a little bit of some of the reasons. It's a confluence of several things. But I think fundamentally, I'm hearing a background noise. Fundamentally, it's upon us as a country, right? We came out of a civil war, right? And we've enjoyed peace for about exactly 20 years to this year, right? Since the UNMIL left, Liberia, I don't think we have valued the peace that we have enjoyed, right? Meaning that these various stakeholders in Liberia never really took accountability of valuing the peace that we've enjoyed over the last 20 years, right? If we did, we would have heard stern stakeholder messages leading up to this campaign about violence, one, two, from the NEC as well, about anybody that stopped incite violence, the consequences of what's going to happen. We're supposed to hear messages like that. Additionally, we're supposed to hear stern messages from the various political parties. At the end of their campaigning, they're supposed to put out messages of tolerance, be tolerant. Yes, there's going to be these level of fights or disagreement, but as Ahmed stated, we have to be tolerant towards each other, right? And I think those are some of the confluence that led up to this kind of fighting and the things that we're seeing in here. Is one, we have not been very aware of the peace we've enjoyed, and the various stakeholders have dropped the ball in terms of sending home a very stern message in terms of holding people accountable about political violence leading up to the election. So for me, I think it's a confluence of everything that everybody has said over here, in addition to the economic side of it. But I think we'll get to that later.
Thank you, Gabriel. And I want each of you to take a minute at each to see the leadership aspect of or the lack thereof, right? And then let's look at our political culture. How our political parties conducting themselves, the political leaders, how are they being the examples that are needed for the young people to follow? Are they even preparing these young people how to engage in political activities? I just want to see, I mean, can we hold the political leaders responsible to a certain extent? Are there failures on their part? Are there some things they have not paid attention to? I mean, I'm just curious, what the leadership aspect of it, how can we hold them accountable here? How do they share any responsibility? James, let's start with you, our political leaders.
Yeah, Dennis, I think Ahmed pointed to that part of it about civic education. We know that NEC. I don't even want to spend much time talking about it because it is just so obvious that NEC really failed to provide the requisite, or even in at the simplest level, any form of voters education, and that too, is complemented by the fact that political parties demonstrated no effort in coming up to even provide something of such at their own level. So yes, it goes across, and like I was saying, it's a rhetoric. The rhetoric has been negative, has not been positive, mainly regarding violence. I know on and off, once in a while, you hear appeals for that, but that's not enough. And so the fact is that they could have done much better regarding that, especially as Carter was saying. The young people in the country. I mean, if you look at social media, the ways young people post, the content that they tend to project, that the family structure has been almost completely destroyed in that country. And studying sociology says that children who are reared by their parents tend to be kind, friendly, and sociable and protective. We had a war, and the war destroyed the country and also destroyed the basic family unit. As a result, we have young people who don't have they have very little predisposition to kindness, to empathy, and other things. For example, Dennis or Ansony, from the time I was born, I can't remember ever biting anybody, even to kill a chicken. I struggled as a young man. And you see the guys taking rocks and putting it on leaving him or being throwing it, so it's just bad. The political leaders could have done much better, but it is sad.
Thank you. And what I want to yet also, maybe we should look at this aspect. Now that this has happened, have we seen leadership from the political leaders, the president included, because this threatened the very election that, peaceful transition, hangs on. Have we heard from the political leaders? This is threatening our democracy. Have we heard anything at all?
Yes, I think I heard from. I'm sorry for coming. You didn't call me, but yes, I did see a statement from the chairperson of the Unity Party regarding that. I think that's the only one I've seen so far from any major political actor.
All right, Mr. Salu, is this one of those instances you want to hear from the president? He's still the leader of the country. This man was elected on the backs of the young people. These are the very young people. I can literally killing each other in the street. Have we heard anything from him?
Thank you, Ansony. Very good question. Let me welcome my esteemed brother, Mohammed Sharif. Listen, we are all saying the same thing here. Leadership is such an important factor in how you set the tone. Okay, so Mr. Blummer was talking about the stages of the electioneering process, right? We haven't even gotten to the most dangerous part yet, and the most dangerous part is when results begin to come in. And of course, we know next our system is not going to be slam dunk, boom. We know who won. We move on. People accept the results. We move on. That's not what will happen, and for reasons that led us up to that point. Well, we can talk about that later. But you are right, Anthony. Leaders, political leaders, these standard bearers of parties should have been the one in all the discourses, in all the campaign messages, in all the stump speeches, reinforcing, reiterating, sending a message of peace and calm. Let's compete. Electoral politics is about competition, but it's not about killing one another. It's not about us being enemies. Maybe you look at uh, the surrogates, right? When they're posting online, when they're speaking to one another, in the manners they do, they bully one another, they call names. I mean, the environment is such that there's no room for even us stepping back and realizing we're just one people. This is a small country. We're all interrelated, intermarried, interconnected across the country, just because we're in different political groups, because sometimes it's not really political institutions as you may like to think, right? And which is part of why we're having this problem, because true political parties, true political institutions have discipline, they have processes, they have leadership that are responsible for messaging, responsible for all kinds of things. We don't, we try to mimic some of these things, but we're not as
Leadership that are
organized.
responsible for messaging, responsible for all kinds of things.
Yeah, myself, I don't know where the feedback is coming from. But just to end my point, so of course, leaders are responsible, right? The president, as the commander in chief, as the leader and the father of the country, when this kind of thing happens, you should hear him speak. You should hear him address the nation, address that specific incident, and call for calm, particularly when it borders on tribal and ethnicity. We know history tells us that ethnicity, tribalism, religious differences, these are flashpoints and drivers of conflict. We don't even want to begin to name countries and places where we've seen election blended with ethnicity and tribe and religion, and the results we've gotten in those places. So yes, we haven't heard enough, not from President Weah, not from Ambassador Joseph Boakai, not from Alexander Cummings, not enough from Tiawan Gongo. I mean, there are people who say, look, they've said, they've condemned it, they've said, yes, yeah, Unity Party issue a statement. I'm just saying throughout the course of the campaigning and how they've conducted themselves, it should have been one of, listen, we're competing because we want the best for our country. At the end of the day, we're all Liberians. We don't need to hurt
They
anyone.
still should hold a peace, but all the students of Banavia
So,
Junction,
so,
Wakami made it.
sorry about that. But talking about we are all one people, a video came up, and because it was so despicable, I just want you to see the person, but I'm going to mute it. A video came up where someone, one Rose Jackson, believed to be a police officer, was calling for total destruction, especially against a particular ethnic group in Liberia. And this is not an isolated incident. We have the violence in Lofa. We have this on the Japanese highway. We have this kind of despicable, even though she came up later to retract based on what she said a family member told her. We see this kind of thing. We also saw that an audio video leaked of Kalasco, the presidential aide, I mean, using all the expletives. What is going on? Why are people so angry? What is and then we see all this, we see the violence, we see the vitriol language, we see a total collapse of people are losing their minds. Mr. Sharif, welcome. And what's going on here? Everybody is having this posture of we're going to fight. And I listened to this woman in her uh, so-called apology. She said, well, in fact, I was calling for Mandingo store to be burned, but my children are half done by a Mandingo man. And so my brother-in-law store is included. Why people are losing their senses, Mr. Sharif?
Yeah, good to be here, Brother Agma, everyone else. So here's an anecdote. During the civil during the Civil War, there was a member of the Geo ethnic group who, when someone complimented her son and said, this child will be great, will be a leader of Liberia tomorrow, a president. And the woman said the woman reply was, no, this is a Mandingo boy. He can't be, to her own son. So keep that in mind as a backdrop to the vile vitriol that you heard from this person. And this person is not speaking for herself. This is not isolated. She may be a nuisance, as far as I know. She may be an ignoramus, as far as I know, but she is speaking for the vast majority of the Liberian people who believe in this kind of nonsense. It happened during the Civil War. There are people out there, so they are not French elements of the Liberian society. We grew up this way. We grew up in a society where we were always told that we don't belong. So we fought hard. We studied hard. We worked hard. Our parents worked hard. Our moms and dads worked hard. Our uncles worked hard for everything that they got. Ahmed will tell you that. We went to school and worked extremely hard because they told us that we didn't belong. So we wanted to prove them wrong. And so we did. And so the strategy for the thing for them was they weren't still satisfied. So so the war came out of disagreements, according to them, political disagreement with the leadership at the time. But part of the reason I will submit to you, Dennis, a part of the reason for the Civil War was this sort of ethnic cleansing. The whole genocidal plan by some of our brothers and sisters that I don't want to name now. But this is what the war was about. The war wasn't just a political campaign to remove Samuel Doe. It was also an ethnic cleansing mission. So what you're seeing now, we're not surprised that this is reoccurring. But what is troubling at this time is the failure of leadership. Mr. George Weah, at the helm of the Liberian presidency, has not shown leadership in terms of curbing the violence. There was violence in Lofa County the other day that nobody has been officially charged and brought before a court of competent jurisdiction. So what is going on? Now, this is festering again. So you have a day ago where you have members of the ACO party versus the CDC. So it was the CDC versus the UP. Now it's ACO versus the UP. So it's everyone else versus the other, brothers against brothers, sisters against sisters. So the country is in a downward spiral. So at the end of the day, when this election is held, what's going to happen is we have to be very careful now because at the end of the day, someone just mentioned that the result. I think it was Ansony who mentioned that he's concerned that when the results are announced, Dennis, this is going to be very, very serious because we don't have the requisite presidential leadership. So when that result is announced and the losing candidate, someone has lost the election, this is going to be now a cause for some type of violence. And I can tell you, Dennis, that I am concerned. I am very concerned about what we're going to see. I can speculate now that it looks like George Weah, in terms of numbers and stuff like that, in terms of you know, a little bit of edge now, momentum wise, it looks like the opposition political candidate Boakai may just slightly be ahead, but George Weah is able to steal this. At the end of the day, George Weah is going to be able to steal this election because it's not a big margin. We're talking very small margin, I think. So George Weah is going to steal this election. And when George Weah steals this election,
Yeah,
there's a feedback. So when
yeah,
George Weah steals this election, yeah. So basically, what I was saying is that you know, so we're talking really two main candidates now. So we're talking George Weah, we're talking Boaka. So the two of them are at the very top of the list, and so one of them is going to win. Is not going to be an outright victory. But what is going to happen then is the other is going to cry foul, and then you're going to have violence in the streets of Monrovia and other cities around the country.
Thank you. Let me bring in Mr. Blamo here. Mr. Blamo.
Yeah.
Mr. Blamo, hold on. Let me bring you in. But I have something else to add there that the people that are like this lady who was making these despicable comments is, as I learned, and I don't have any proof, it's a police officer. We also see other members of the police security that are in party uniforms that are running campaigns. I mean, I was talking to one law enforcement officer. He said these things, he said during our days, the one we refer to normal day, these things were never seen. That a police officer, military, in fact, there was a video where some of the security personnel are urging other people, say, yes, follow them, go. And, Mr. Blambo, these things, you from the progressive era, these things, we never saw them. What's going on now?
Dennis, I think we have to get real with ourselves. I was living in Germany, and there was this exhibition in which it was a Liberian art exhibition. I brought my two daughters to the art show, and something told me, go in there and see what kind of art is on display. So I told them to sit down at a cafe, and I went in. And with God as my witness, the first piece of art was a little boy with a human being head with blood dropping from the human head. I ran out of there because it was not in Liberia that I knew. I ran out of there. The reality is we keep dreaming of a country that does not exist. And right now, even this idea of Mohammed trying to run a campaign on the show that they will be predicting war is not even an appropriate discussion. It's perpetuating the division. I used to go to St. Patrick Elementary School, and the boys from West Point, the crew boys, were looked down upon by Bida Harris and St. Patrick, the cathedral. But all those boys came up the hill, came to school, and studied. And they tapped the classes while the other boys that were in school were supposed to be the better human being. So we all have our struggles. I sat with Mandingo people in classroom, Mohammed Salih, good guys who tap our classes. They were Mandingo. They came from an era in which people said those people were nothing. And those boys made their name. We just had a finance minister who is from the Mandingo tribe, one of the most brilliant finance ministers we ever had. Everybody have their story in the struggle. So we should not personalize it that, well, George Weah will steal the election or this person will do. We just don't have a system. We have unemployed people who are susceptible to political actors to carry out violence. We have political parties that have not made reconciliation. They are fighting a war. There is no ground to process constructive grievances or disagreement. Our country is not politically mature. So now we look at a little boy who is 15 years old and we expect a high level behavior from him when the people at the top are not displaying that. We have to stop addressing symptoms and start addressing causes. We don't have a political system mature enough Even our democracy is not a democracy. Presidential elections is not about democracy. Democracy has to ensure empowerment of the people. It has to put food on the table. It has to bring health care. It has to show equality of voting. In 176 years, we cannot vote. We cannot vote for our county superintendents. We cannot vote for city mayor. Then we make 360 degrees and come and assume that we will have an American democracy. No, we are operating where we need to operate. The problem is we need to review the physical structure, the political structure. It failed.
Yep.
And regardless of who wins this election, we will be reconfiguring another aristocratic regime to pretend that everything is okay. So we have a system that has failed.
Thank you,
It
Mr. Jack.
failed, and we need to do something better. That's the problem.
Mr. Blamo, thank you there. I think you said a lot. Dennis, we will conclude on the violence and my own summation here. Now that this has happened, you would think you will see serious leadership from the political leaders. I must say I'm not sure they have done enough, but my emphasis is going to be on the president. I have repeatedly said President Weah is not a leader. It's a pity that he succeeded becoming president of Liberia. When things like this happen, you should see a leader who speaks. Look at what happened, Sekou Kalasco. The outburst, the language that came from his mouth. This is a presidential aide who spoke in their chat room, and the language that came from her mouth so vile. The least you should expect from the leader of a country is to have this guy suspended immediately. That language, because he is a representation of the office of the president. He is a presidential aide who spoke in that way, and the president is yet to utter a word. Now, look at the young people killing each other in the street, literally. President Weah does not have the courage. He does not see the need to even read a prepared statement. Samuel Twe does not even have the consciousness to say we'll prepare a statement for President Weah to read. Not even Eugene Nabe. These people don't respect our people, Dennis. I mean, look at the political leaders, all of them. We are having a democracy. We are talking about presidential debate. Cummings did not go to the debate. Weah did not go to the debate. Bouaka did not go to the debate. And they want to tell us that they are examples when it comes to leadership in our country. These are the people that are leading the charge for the practice of democracy in our country. What will encourage the young people to even have a civil debate among themselves? What will encourage them? How? I mean, so if we didn't go to debate, and so Cummings chose not to go there, Waka chose not to go there, so where is the standard now? And then they turn around and telling us he's bad? What is the difference there?
Can I add something real quick to that? I think I shared exactly what Mr. Blamo said, and Anthony, I do absolutely agree with you. To brush what Mr. Blamo said in terms of the institution, and they said in order to connect the dot in the future, you have to look back to your history. You don't connect the dot looking forward, you connect it looking forward. I mean, looking backwards. And I agree with the absence of institution, political institution. But I also want to echo something I think that, Anthony said, right? But I think I just want to take it a step further. The onus, in as much that we're looking at the political parties in this election here, the onus, the biggest burden of ensuring an effective campaign and election is on the president. Let's not forget that. Why? Because he has a responsibility to ensure that he has the budget with he's oversees the budget. He oversees the treasury to fund the police and make sure we have enough police forces on increase in the field, right? He has the responsibility to ensure that NEC is properly funded to ensure a proper election, right? He has a responsibility to even increase the military standby just in case there will be any uprising or violence like we saw in the street before. So in as much that we want to, yes, I agree, we should hold the various political party responsible as well for them not speaking up as well. But the biggest majority, the biggest onus is upon the president to ensure this. And this is why I agree with both of you that given those incidences, he's supposed to come out and make a statement and effectively upon that. Not only that, the LPN is supposed to stop going on social media. I think James talks about this earlier. Going on social media and try identifying some of those people that were involved in it and start arresting people, right? Start arresting people and holding them accountable. That's what is going to send a message that this is cannot be tolerated, right?
Thank
So
you.
in as much that we want to put the blame on the rest of the political party, the biggest onus is upon this president to ensure that he has a treasury, he has a budget, he's supposed to be funding that, the police, and even the military, given what we have seen, to ensure that this campaign, this election goes out effectively. Thank you.
There's a last one here. Mohammed.
I will come to you, Mr. Lassa,
Okay,
because
okay.
I want to go to Mr. Salif, because in the absence of the president or other political leaders making statements, we'll have statements coming from us here tonight on Focus on Liberia, and this will be in 2 Liberian languages. And we'll have 2 volunteers. But before that, Mr. Salif, how do we move forward? Tomorrow is election. How do we ensure now that things will be peaceful? Say, if you want to see how the Christmas look at the Eve. The Eve here is not looking good.
Yeah. So what Mr. Carter was saying, the electoral management body, the National Elections Commission, has the responsibility. If they're well funded, I understand the government met its funding obligations. I don't know the fact, but part of the duty is civic education, is to also ensure and exude confidence, exudes transparency, exudes fair play, that they are truly there and running a process that has integrity, so that is devoid of suspicion. Because if you go into the election where people see some kind of malfeasance already, oh, you didn't publish the final voter roll early, you didn't do this early, you've kind of created some cloud around the whole process, right? So let's hope that none of that really is taken seriously, because as someone said, we've had successive elections, whether it's at a representative level, senatorial, we've even had presidential elections. We've had a first transition from a one president to the next in what was it, 144 years, from President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to President Weah. So yes, there have been some successes given our post-conflict history. What do we do now going in the election is managing that result announcement, calculation, release process as nicely, as transparently as possible. And then also sending the message to these candidates, and including the president, that they have to keep their people in check, and really encourage Liberian people to be patient, use the court system. And the court also has to be perceived to be just and fair, because if people are already saying, well, the president has packed the Supreme Court of justices of his choice, his tribe, and so on, and those remain unaddressed, those issues and suspicions have remained unaddressed. There's grievances when one associate justice was impeached illegally, as as many have said. So that those issues, we're praying and hoping that our people don't really buy into any of those, that we focus on the peace, because peace is important. We have done well since Omeo left. People, a lot of people didn't think that we would have been able, given we're now for our security apparatus. Now we're funded. They could use some training and all of those things, and yet the Liberian citizens, by and large, because now the government, the government is supposed to provide security and protection and ensure that, but with all these governance lapses, people have said, we want peace. We want to maintain the peace. We don't want to go back to the war years. So we are where we are. We hope they can manage the messaging, they can manage the result process, the announcement of it, and being very clear about what will happen next. So if you announce someone and say, well, the results are so close, or here's how we got to this place, and these are the next steps under the law, please use the court, use the institutions. That will help us a whole lot. If not, if we degenerate into bellicose rhetoric and into claiming victory already and those kinds of things, man, we are on the cusp of something we don't want to imagine. We're not asking for, we're not praying for.
Thank you. At this time, since we don't have people talking, we want people from FOL to talk. We'll start with Mr. Lassa, who's going to talk to Liberians about violent-free election in one of our major Liberian languages. And that will be followed by Mr. Carter. Mr. Lassa, 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm so we're ha ka election day ha bu ka ba ke leader ge kuga votika kuno mama ba so me ga ku mo kai nya bai wa han kuluna ge kuga nam ko o age kuga monyo ke kwalinai ga han ku votika kwa votika kunam ko kulu kubrela. So when we got here, Africa nere gahan election mama bai ika waka mama ba peherai kukre kukatono ye kahena na ba jim lasa ngoka
Balika. Gabriel.
Yeah, thank you. New Year, we are monta we told now election amia ganganua. Ngera ba tiba monita ba muna a voter ba ne online gire bo podi na vote moni kebi nyunde ba tum kwen ni duala nyina je ka se ne vote bo moni kebi nyu im vote mi wa vote ya the future then in mi wa vote ya ni mwani vote ni mwani bu kle bo mu du wa just ka se ne vote bo moni kebi the future then mi vote ya ete net ngira bo blowam ta mini mua vote a mi mua du ani mu wa nyu mu vote a te ni mu adu wa ka se ne vote e moni kebi e kwale net ngira bo bole awen apepe ani ne blonke pruwa hapo telue so kalwe net ngira bo bole awen nganga ba mo nga vote a awia.
My people that here they thought that tomorrow that voting time. So we bake your voting and now war. The president business will come and will pass and will still be here. We are JJ Rabo, Charity, Thomas, or we stay, the country stay here. So no problem here that we can face. We all want people, whether you Pele man, you Google man, you man, you Gio man, that is same Liberia. When they call all we let the same thing. We all can eat cassava, we all can eat potato green, we all can eat palm, but we all the same. So there is no need for you to be killing one another. Your small children, you don't even see war here. The war that fought that killed plenty of people. We will not go back to that. So we bake here. That was the official statement from Focus on Liberia, urging all our people for a violent-free elections. Mr. Sieh, let's transition to our topics for the day.
But I know what, Dennis, I didn't have time to speak on the looming situation.
45 seconds. 45
okay.
seconds.
Okay, great. I just wanted to point out that I did listen to Mohammed, and I really agree with much of what he said regarding concerns about the election and about potential fraudulent activities that will be there, because we have early indicators. I want to run through that quickly, such as that election, the number of voters to be registered at certain polling centers exceeded the required number by 2,000 compared to 3,000. It should be 3,000 maximum. It went to 2,000. That's number one. The registration rule wasn't made available. Then now there's to be no perforation in the election. There's a one thing that is not known. The election commission was able to replace a lot of election supervisors and workers in the various counties and put in people of their choosing. They have been accused of coming from the CDC. These are concerns, and Mohammed's concerns are well-founded, and we need to be looking out, especially if the Supreme Court is going to be voting to say, oh, the election commission, they didn't violate, although the basis is not clear. The election commission said, for example, they increased the voting threshold from 3,000 to 5,000 because of disabled people, but they didn't have any study or report to show that any given place have more disabled people than other areas. I mean, it's just so bad for the country, and we all should be concerned about that. Sure.
Thank you.
On that note, we will take a short break, and we will be right back.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
I am Ansony Sieh, and we are back with you in this election eve discussion or analysis. Like Dennis said, they say if your Christmas would be good, you got to look at the eve. The eve is not looking good as we know it to be. But tomorrow is election day, and we want to know whether or not the stakeholders have done what was expected to be done in order for us to have a free, fair, transparent, and violence-free election. We will look at the candidates, we'll look at the political parties, we'll look at the voters, we'll look at the National Election Commission, we'll look at the Supreme Court, we will look at law enforcement agency. Did everybody play their part, and did they do it well for us to have a peaceful, transparent, and violence-free election? With that, we want to look at the candidates first of all. Dennis, can we start with that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So to our panelists, we want to look at the candidates. The vetting of candidates, first of all. Did we do a good job, or did the parties do a good job? And the candidate themselves, did they actually prepare for the election? Did they conduct themselves? Did they lead their followers and their members well to prepare for the election? Let's start with that. Mr. Salif, the candidates, what was expected of them? Did they do it to be prepared for election tomorrow?
Yeah, this is a big question, Ansony. Under the circumstances, the candidates, they did their best. Let's take candidate by candidate. If you ask me, because it's not monolithic, candidates. If you talk about Tiawan Gonglo, we will have to consider all kinds of factors and messaging. If you talk about George Mana, we have to consider all kinds of factors and the incumbency and the purse of the incumbency. If you talk about Ambassador Joseph Walker. So let's quickly scan and see. For one, our politics across the board, electoral politics is about crowd competition. Who can demonstrate that they have the largest crowd, and that this is an indication that this person is popular, perhaps their message is resonating, and therefore they will win. By the crowd, it will translate to votes. That is this assumption that everybody's operating on. And therefore, this drone competition, right? Somebody wants to, are you going to ATS or are you going to SKD? Well, we saw the CDC, they put up a crowd. This was a magnificent, right? In competition with Unity Party. In the rain, Unity Party launched The crowd was there. So, you know, that's like just one level, one handle by which we can begin to decipher what are these candidates or what they're supposed to do. In terms of them traveling around the country, it's a matter of resources, because I always say political campaign success and strategy has to do with three things primarily: the political environment, what resources do you have, and who are your opponents or who is your opponent. Based on that, when I'm looking at these candidates, I'm like, who has more resources? Of course, President Weah, because of the key impressive incumbency, they were able to really traverse the country as quickly as possible. Went to Western Liberia, went to my own home region. They were able to go to Bopolo, Bomi, Kipma, and then they switched to Bassa and went to Lofa and Nimba and elsewhere. They did that very well. Unity Party, what I saw was Ambassador Barker's strategy today there was deploying strategic aids like the running mate, you know, like who they call rescue mother. And this person, they were all over the place, but it wasn't always the candidate everywhere. They were very strategic about where the resources should be deployed. We want to focus on Nimba, we want to focus on Bassa and Montserrato, and then of course they went to Lofa. But the thing there is, what we learn in campaign school, if you have limited resources, be strategic. Your base is always your base. Your base is the sin. The sins will vote for you even if you are the worst person. The sinners will vote against you no matter what if you give them $1 million. Who you're looking for is the middle. Instead, they went to their base. They went to their bases. Why? Because they wanted to show crowd. We saw that across with all the candidates, okay? So yes, they show crowd, they travel. Those are the basics, the bare minimum. Messaging, the anyone demonstrate contract. The any message stick with you. The any message resonate. It was difficult. Now, even as you're asking me, it started hitting me. What was Baka's a different message than George Weah's message? The rescues the message that tells, oh, okay, that's the slogan, of course, right? There's something to be rescued because something is wrong. There's a veil and that kind of. Maybe that's what resonates. You may say that, but everybody has had some kind of slogan, all right? So on the messaging side, they didn't do their job. They didn't do well. To somebody's point, they didn't respect the people. If you didn't go to debate, if you didn't do the specific kinds of messaging and stump speeches in places, segment the electorate in ways that were very deliberate, we will question that. However, all politics being local, these people were strategic. Our people don't care about that. What they care about, you go to this place, you show up and do this, and then they will vote for you. So that's kind of what they went with. That was the strategy. Across messaging, they didn't do well. Travel, some of them did better than others. Crowd, the competition, we all saw it.
Right. And based on that question, Mr. Sharif, how does that translate into what we expect from the candidates tomorrow? Based on what Sharif said, if you agree or disagree, will it make anyone to win or lose tomorrow?
Yeah, so within the vortex of Liberian political campaign, what you do have is you have candidates that appeal to their base. Ahmed couldn't say correctly. So they go to their base, they put the poll crowd. So it's about the game of, how many thousands or tens of thousands that we can put out in the streets of Monrovia, as you saw with George Weah, and in some instances, even with Cummins, but especially George Weah and Boakai. So what you do have, and I'll go to Cummins for a minute, when because part of the question there was, in terms of selecting that vice presidential candidate, what I did see during the CPP's vice presidential candidate selection. When that selection was done, when it was sealed, so the day that it was announced, and Charlene Brumskin's speech, before Charlene came on stage, most of the speakers before her was, they were telling Grand Bassa, this is your candidate, this is your time now. The Bassa people, your daughter is here. The Bassa people, that speaks to Agnes' point. Why are you belaboring that point to the Bassa people? Why can't you move on from that message? You already have Bassa as a base. So what are you afraid of? What are you trying to do? So it's not a good political strategy. If you're going to present Mohammed Sharif to the Mandingo people and represent Mohammed Sharif to the Mandingo people, what are you doing? You need to move on from there and go to places where you're going to sell him. You're going to go to different regions. So it is not smart that candidates are picked and then they keep going back to the well, keep going back to the same place over and over and again. So that's an observation that I made of the CPP, the initial days of the vice presidential candidate selection. So now you come to the closing hours and the closing minutes of this very important election. What you have is that George Weah has demonstrated that he still has, this sort of base that he can tap into. These people that, regardless of what he does, regardless of the fact that he has kept the country underdeveloped, regardless of the fact that he has perpetuated corruption, inefficiency, ineptitude, they are going to vote for him regardless. And these people are very stuck in that place. But what you also have now is an opposition that has momentum. The opposition really, and this is a big surprise because some time ago, it wasn't clear that that the opposition can amass this much support, because you speak to people in Monrovia now and they will tell you, I spoke to a friend in Monrovia a couple of days ago, and he said, the support for Weah is not as you think it is. So things have changed now, where the opposition, this thing is like neck and neck. And so what I will say, Dennis, I will conjecture is that George Weah, if it's neck and neck and very close, George Weah is going to manipulate and steal this election. James Lasseter's point is very well taken, because George Weah controls the National Elections Commission. George Weah controls the court system. George Weah controls the apparatus of government. George Weah has the funding to do what he needs to do to carry this election. And so that is where my fear is, because he's going to lose by a slim margin, so he can manipulate the election this way. And I don't know. I mean, there is something is telling me that there's going to be uneasy time in Liberia for quite some time.
Mr. Sieh, let me hold you there before Ansony come in, because when you say something like that this election is coming, George Weah is going to cheat, don't you think that's going to send a message to people that no matter how the election turns, and if in fact George Weah wins clearly, people are going to say, we told you he's going to cheat? Because we've seen and heard some of the rhetorics saying, well, the only way we're going to lose this election is when they cheat us. So don't you think language like that is going to inflame some hostility and cause some trouble? Mr. Sharif.
I apologize. I'm trying to take care of some things here. But so the reality is we're not around. I don't sit around to basically please people or to do the sort of things that others would do. What I do is, I didn't do computer science, Dennis. I think you're a computer expert. It's something in computer science that says giggle, garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you put in is what you're going to get out of the computer, right? So whatever data you enter is what you're going to get out. So what I'm saying here is that the ruling establishment, what they have established, the pattern. So let me digress, if I may, for a second. You guys are talking about why is all this violence going on? Because the regime started all of this. You remember what happened, when those university students were brutalized. So nothing came of it. And we've talked about ad nauseum the violence in the last 4 years, 5 years, things that have happened without any repercussion. So now the chickens have come home to roost. So let me go back to my point. The administration is setting up, is setting up the ground where there is going to be fraud. Look, they're complaining that the opposition is going to commit fraud. So they're writing the ECOWAS and the United Nations and the United States Embassy. What sense does that make? That George Weah now, his government, is accusing the opposition of trying to steal the election, because that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Correct.
I will submit to you.
Exactly. Dennis, you don't mind?
Yeah, because my question is, Mr. Bwaka once said, if the elections are rigged, that's the end of the country. And so if someone is now predicting that the elections will be rigged, I don't know how you can square those two statements. But go ahead, Mr. Lassa.
Yeah, I think Mohammed is speaking more of the likelihood of that, which I definitely not only agree with, but certainly support strongly, because there are more than sufficient indicators pointing in that direction. But look, to Ansony's question about the readiness or the action of political leaders in the election, and I want to clearly state that I think I would like to give it to VP Bwaka in terms of his leadership in the campaign, because in campaigns, you mainly look at 5 factors. 3 key among them include your ability to raise funds, your ability to generate appeals, and also your ability to, to project the right messaging. And I think VP Bwaka went beyond that. Even his selection of his VP was very, very strategic, to be frank with you. Now, let me just elaborate a little bit. In the election, we have one of the main arguments against VP Bwaka was that he did lack funding, he didn't have resources. But through this election season, we have seen that he has emerged eventually in the end to appear to be the most funded political leader in the opposition. It was that he couldn't pay his rent.
What is the evidence of that he's being funded?
That was I'm saying, that he couldn't pay his rent. He was being taken to court. He had to be evicted. In the end, he has managed to have one of the most strategically located political headquarters, and then he also has a campaign headquarters. So far, that is the only political party I know that has a political party headquarters and then a campaign headquarters. That's one. And then his ability to sustain the campaign to this point, we've been informed through the chairperson, Senator Nyombi Kanga, that they've been able to generate resources for all nearly 14,000 poll watchers. That says a lot about him. And his appeal, Ambassador Bwaka, in fact, the fundraising, just in days, diaspora Liberians were able to raise about more than $200,000 for pool washing. That tells you a lot.
And you think that is significant amount of money for which you're giving this huge credit?
Yeah, it is significant in the sense that, especially given all of the arguments that were made against him, especially if he cannot find any other candidate in the race who has been able to raise such amount in such a short time.
It's the people who are coming to him to say, well, we want Weah out, so we will rather contribute to this effort. Is it a leadership that has been exhibited to have attracted the individuals?
I don't think people just go about giving up money. They have to have confidence. They have to have inspiration and other things and assurances. I don't think other than that they will give it to any other candidate. And then
you give him credit for the VP pick. Tell me how good a VP in Kun that you see for which you think is a strategic.
I think it's strategic because in the first place, I was against it, and there are good reasons to be against it. But if you understand campaign work and you know that the ultimate goal is to win, then you get to appreciate more profoundly the reason why he selected Kun. Kun is from the second biggest political base in the country. Not only the numbers, but the spirit. All of the work of the progressives, I'm talking about our bigger brothers, the Tipote, the Duopu, the Oscar Kuya, he's working in Nima. Much of the work of the progressives in terms of political consultation and other things, they mainly used to be done in Nima and Granjida, but Nima was the main one. And that is something that many people don't know. When it comes to political consciousness, the Nima people, in fact, if you remember, that is one reason that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Baranta couldn't agree, and she made sure she didn't hire him through her administration, and I mean that very sorrowfully in Basel, was that she intended isolating the people of Nima County because she knew that if she had projected them and given them space, they might have made problem for her in the political process, and she isolated them. He was like, "No, we can't do this. These people are very important." So Bouaka recognized that, and it's going to pay off. The Nima people are very politically spirited, and that is going to prove it. That is going to pay off well as compared to Bouaka selecting, say, for example, Costa or somebody else. So that is going to pay off. Although we have questions with Kun and things, but look, you can never have a perfect situation.
And James, I want to throw this in too, right?
Let's move on.
I meant talk about the messaging. Something I want you to respond to here.
Yeah.
The aspect of slogan that our government advisor had mentioned in campaign, sometimes at the close of the campaign, sometimes that's the only thing that's left with the people.
Correct.
Obama had a brilliant plan, but it was that, change for hope. That was the resounding message. If you look at the slogans, coming, fixer, all right, they are the fixer. Bouaka, rescue. And we have Propo, Tiawong Gonglo is talking about the broom, right? All of them, the major candidate, whose slogan you think is resonating with the people? And is there anything that person has done? Is it the people that come into that person for some obvious reason? Is it because of that slogan that they chose? I mean,
Actually, we talk about the rescue mission. Certainly, that is the most popular slogan around rescue mission. And Ambassador Bouaka himself spoke of his own creativity when it comes to such issues as ideas about developments and other things. And I think you have to give him the credit for that. I heard Costa saying he brought about that, but anybody can put claim to that. In the meantime, that can be credited to the UP campaign. It's a rescue mission, is the Think Liberia, Love Liberia, Build Liberia rescue mission. And that has played out well for VP Bouaka in terms of generating and enhancing his appeal across the country.
All right.
Can I?
Yeah, Gabriel, I want you to respond to that aspect of the messaging. The whole
there's a whole lot of what to say.
Bigger question, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed by everything that I've heard so far. I am very, especially for those of you that have seen the history of Liberia, and you're now looking at it in the lens of this campaign season that we're in, and you guys are making this kind of statement that, like, I'm very disappointed. Like, I am, as somebody, maybe I can probably assume that I'm probably the younger person on here, and I'm very disappointed. And the reason why I'm disappointed is because this, I'm kind of baffled, but I will slow down to say what I want to say.
Yeah, we want to hear
this
that.
campaign should have been about policies and economic policies. This thing that you guys have jumped on now and said, oh, it's about the crowd, this, and it shouldn't, the crowd should have nothing to do with it. For the history that we've had, to come out of that, some of you were even here talking about the inequality with tribal groups, right? And some of these guys were able to muzzle their way through that and become something. And now you are sitting here perpetuating this crowd politics with tribalism that you guys are kind of putting out there in the 21st century. I mean, I understand if we were still in Liberia.
How did anyone?
No. Let me finish.
But then the conversation has to be engaging, though. I mean,
no. I didn't call any of you guys up when you guys were talking. This is, we're not in a Thai shop here. We're on a good platform. You talk, I listen. If you have a point, rest. When I rest, you respond to that, right? Okay, relax.
Then agree at Thai shop.
Mohammed, please let me talk, please. Okay, I listen to all of you guys here. So you guys were talking about this whole division in Liberia. Now I understand every one of us remain in Liberia and we didn't have any level of exposure. Then we can say, okay, there's the same system that we've seen. We haven't had any exposure, so it's okay. I will make that excuse for you guys to say that is okay. But we have come into different society. We have seen the exposure. And you guys are here. This campaign should have been about economic policy, right? It should have been about economic policy. I will admit that none of the candidates have done very good job. Let me finish.
May I ask Gabriel before you go?
Gabriel, you will continue, but may I ask Gabriel, even in the US, when a campaign is getting to the wire, it is about the red meat each party will throw at its base. That is a reality. They all have their plans.
No,
The plans
Anthony,
are
let
released
me
during debates. You understand? But when it comes to trying to win the voters at the end of the day, this is what these people are saying. You think that is not a reality?
no, you are assuming. If you ask that question, you're assuming Gabriel is totally right what he's saying. I just want to interject and ask you, Gabriel. You were here, you listen. You say you are disappointed in us or in what? The question to us was assess the candidate. What did they do? What did you see? When I say I at least speaking for myself, I didn't say it wasn't about economic messaging or this should have been the question was, now that we are where we are, how did they do? Assess the candidate.
guys,
We'll say,
let
well,
me
yeah. So did they cry? You say you're disappointed we didn't talk, we didn't,
so
say that, oh, it
I
should be
will
about economic. That's where I'm lost.
I'll reiterate myself. Right? I am disappointed in both the candidates, one, and also you guys perpetuating this narrative jumping. I understand, as I said, I understand if we didn't have this level of exposure and we all remain in Liberia, or we didn't have some level of education to be able to know the history of Liberia and say, okay, now we've coming out of that, this is what we want. Like, we should not be talking about crowd this. Yes, I understand you go out there to sell your message, but every candidate that go on stage, they talk about the economic policy. You don't go to say you rally your crowd, your policies and what you're going to do for the country. You
Gabriel,
diagnose what it.
in the
Let me finish.
US, they rather the crowd. We saw the
Let me
crowd at
finish. Let me
Trump
finish.
rallies.
Let me
We saw
finish.
the crowd at Hillary rallies. We saw the
Let me
crowd at
finish.
Obama's rally.
Let me
These
finish.
are facts.
Okay, let me finish. Let me finish.
Mhm.
You rally the crowd. Why do you think rallies the crowd? What
The
do them
rally, the
candidates
crowd
say?
of their messaging. Sometimes it's just the slogan at the end of the day.
That's what I'm saying. Those are the economic policy within that message. Is what they perpetuate, they hone, they continue to hone, and that's what the people gravitate towards. Not we full of ATS stadium. Oh, this person. No, it's not about that.
That's
It's
not
not
true.
even. It's
So
That's
not
not
let me
even.
true.
finish, guys. Listen, I can't do this with you guys. Come on now, let's be
No, no,
civil
no,
here.
no, Carter, we have
No,
to
let's
be
be
engaging.
civil. Let's
We
be
we
we
have
civil.
have
to.
to be engaging, okay? You
No,
can
it
still
can't be
make a
like that.
point.
We can't do that. Come on, guys. We can't do that. I listen to you guys
All right,
talk.
cut up, hurry up and put your point through. Are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
saying
Let me
what
talk.
is
Come
it
on,
that
we
the
can't do that,
voters,
guys. Come on now.
Mr. Carter, what is it that the voters want? Because I think your point here is your fellow panelists are looking at crowd. But what is
And you
it
guys
that the
keep cutting me
candidate
off. I'm
gave
trying to
that
make my
attracted the
point here.
people?
Yeah, they're looking at. I'm trying to make my point, but you guys keep cutting me off, and
Take
cutting me off.
about 10
That's
minutes to
this.
make that one point.
No. Do you
All right,
guys keep track of how long you talk for?
go ahead, Mr. Go ahead,
We
Gabriel.
need to start making time here. Like, I'd like to be civil, guys. Let's do that, please. Can we? Please, I'm begging you guys.
You can be civil and still be engaging.
No. I didn't cut you guys. You don't cut somebody out in the middle of the sentence. If we're gonna do that, we're not going to finish each other's sentence here. You'll be talking, everybody will cut you off, and nobody will get any point across.
Go ahead, Gabriel.
Right?
You got the floor.
So, as I was saying, this campaign should have been about economic policies,
Okay.
meaning that where the country is economically, where it has been, and where, as a candidate coming into the race, where you're going to take it. Here's the thing you guys don't understand. Each and every one of you on this platform, you have that ability to self-actualize, right? Meaning you have a job, either you're retired or you have a business. From that business, you have an income that takes care of your basic need, right? It takes care of your need. Any disposable income, it allows you to do any ambitious thing, whether you want to get into philanthropic or you want to do other things to do that. But the basic is to self-actualize. Tell me the number of people in Liberia that are able to self-actualize, like you and I right now. None of that. But here we are talking about talking about crowd politics and yes, the same candidates, they one person started with that, and I agree. That's why I'm disappointed in them. Every one of them jumped onto that and they forgot about the whole thing. Every one of them put out their platform so very late that some of us that talk about economic policy on our show, we didn't have the time to even look at it because it was too late. Everybody jump on that. I will say this and I will land quickly. You guys keep talking about, I don't listen. I'm from the bush. The part of Liberia I'm from is from the bush. So I don't beat around the bush. I say how it is. And when you rather you can slice through and you come in the bush with me. Like, hey, I will say this clearly. This campaign, even talking about the candidate selection, right? To even label Kuhn as a great vice president candidate, if God forbid, if something were to happen to the Pape right now, do any of you believe that Kuhn is able to lead Liberia? That's one, right? That you can
Kuhn is
answer that
better.
on your own.
He
Let me
is
finish.
better
That's one.
able
I
than
will say this
Joel
and I will end.
Houghton or
I will say this and I will end.
Johnston
I
or
will say this
whoever.
and I will end. That's one. The second thing is there's the Prince Johnson effect on him. Prince Johnson is sanctioned. Prince Johnson is close to Kuhn. If this Pape come to power, God forbid, right? There will be U.S. government. The U.S. government cannot do anything with anybody who is sanctioned. You guys are not looking. You're just looking at this crowd,
Thank you.
and you're forgetting the larger scale of the economic aspect of it. It could
Thank you.
impact Liberia's ability to get funding. We depend on donors' fund. 30% of our budget come from it. So if you're sanctioned, you're picking somebody who's sanctioned, you're not able to get that fund. What do you think is going to happen to it economically? That is the biggest question you need to answer here. I rest my case.
So, Dennis,
Correct. Thank you.
Dennis.
Yeah, can I come in?
Yeah, I want
Let's leave be the last. He's a bookman.
There was a question Ansony asked. I think we kind of degenerated into something else, but we really want to take a look at. Anyway, go ahead, Blambo, and answer Mr. Ansony's question.
Yeah. You know, I believe that I have to side with Mr. Carter on certain things. And basically, I believe that the messaging factor in this campaign was poor. And basically, in a campaign, that you divide the groups into the three groups. You have your the people that support you, your opponent, and the undecided. You target those people strategically in that way. All of them focus their bases. And this slogan that you're talking about, and we believe, Mr. Carter and I and some voters, that policy was not highlighted, and the crowd politics is what lead to violence. Everybody was creating this emotion in a bunch of poor people.
What is crowd politics? Let's define that for us.
No, I'm not going to define because you will say out of time. The thing is, when you appeal to the crowd as the basics of your campaign, and the crowd is not a sophisticated crowd that can handle these emotions, and you don't make and correct and planning how to control them, you don't have sufficient security. That way, we have this nonsense. In the picking of the candidate, the honorable gentleman said it was strategically done. It was poor. If you're looking for Nima Kande and you believe in Nima Kande, with God as your witness, who is the best candidate in Nima Kande? Is it Kuhn or Gonglo? They went for Gonglo. In the words of the vice president, he said, when they told him, why are you taking Prince Johnson's godson, etc., he said there are many devils in the bush. That's the whole strategy. He wants to win the election. And he's going for, even if someone is sanctioned, the implication or the effect of it on our international cooperation, that is not a factor. We just want to win. So the debate was canceled because practically they refused to show up. They don't respect the Liberian people. And Joe Barker rescue mission will come back to haunt him. If Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in 12 years could not rescue Liberia, Joe Barker is putting his reputation on the line that in 6 years, Joe Barker, will rescue the whole country and everybody will have food to eat. Watch the demonstration in Liberia if he wins this election. Because he will have lied to the people. The second aspect I want to stress is that with the numbers going, and Mr. Mohammed is trying to be this Jesus first cousin, and George Weah is the devil. Black Part calling a ticketer black when he's serving Ellen government on Ellen's son, and all those ridiculous things were going on. Now George Weah is the worst man in the universe. There is nobody set to win this election, and it's not written on the wall that the opposition are leading. Every party is making strides to win, and the election is close. There is no indication that George Weah will cheat. It's all what we're hearing from opposition. They're telling us George Weah will cheat, just like Donald Trump told the whole world that Biden and Democrat were going to cheat. And at the end, that was their strategy. When Donald Trump was defeated, the people could not accept it because they have been fed sufficiently, and they believe that Donald Trump was going to be cheated. We are setting Liberia up for another fall like that. We have to be objective. Our democracy in Liberia and the nomination system is not fair. They hand out 3 aristocrats, 3 rich guys, and say, pick from them. Those 3 candidates were not the best candidate that Liberia could produce, but people lack funds. Counties can't produce anybody. The Morovia gang decides that these are the nominees, and we go crazy and say we must vote for them. And then we come up with all these things. This person is better than this. That person, when all these presidential candidates are almost the same. And the vice president was in power for 12 years. He said that he couldn't do anything with Ellen. Ellen was corrupt. Ellen was this. All these irresponsible statements. We can't sit there and say that he will win this election and George Weah will cheat in the election. We have to be objective. Democracy is about faith. We have to wait. We have to vote. We have to use the court system, and we have to stand for what we believe. At the end of the day, the people will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel.
Dennis, my name was
again, I want us
invoked.
to continue the discussion. Hold on, Mr. Sharif. I want us to situate the discussion here. We are looking at tomorrow and we say, what do we expect? What have they done? So it is not really about, who's Bwaka versus this person. So I don't want us to go that way before we go far from because we are just talking about the candidates who want to come to political parties, the voters, what we expect the voters turn out to be, for instance, if this thing, how we expect NEC to manage this whole thing. So we have a lot to cover, and so let us not go into this one-on-one. So the question that Ansony asked previously, I want us to go to that.
But you asked me,
Mr. Sharif.
Okay.
I will go.
No, I was going to say, I think my Dennis, I'm speaking to the voters. I'm speaking to political parties. The comments I'm about to speak to, it sort of derives from what Mr. Carter said. Look, when the question was asked, how have they done? What have they done so far, right? We gave an assessment. First of all, I just want to debunk, look, political campaigns are not always about economic policy. It's called issue positions, issues blanketly. Issues could be national security issue, could be foreign policy issue, it could be economic issues, and the economic issue could be further broken down to all kinds of sub-economies and economic matters. So for Mr. Carter to see disappointed in, and that we didn't hold the candidates to the economic issues. I talk about messaging. It's called messaging. All of it, messaging. I said the only thing I remember are the slogans, because the messaging, they didn't do well. It was lost in the whole thing. And our politics is local. That means pay attention to your electorate. At the end of the day, you want to get to your win number. How do you get there? What do the people, what resonates with your electorate? Study them, understand the data. It's scientific. Once you know what they want, That's what you're preaching. That's what your campaign strategy is about. So you win and govern. When you govern now, you're not talking economics, we're talking crowd politics, then come back and be disappointed.
Yeah, so
it could also be policy, or what you said.
Yeah, but that's what I said. It's called issues. We just call it
Okay.
issue. What? And then we ask the question: what's the candidate's issue positions? Positions, well, plurality position. What does that mean? Where do they stand on the economy? Which aspect of the economy? Agriculture. Which aspect of the economy? We name them macroeconomic. All of that kind of stuff. Okay, and there are candidates in this race who actually focus on economy, on economic matters. Okay, but that wasn't resonating. What was resonating, is to jazz up your base and the crowd and that kind of thing. And you're not just bringing people together for nothing. You're telling them something they want to hear. You're doing something with them. So anywhere, all over in the world, you need rallies. You need crowds.
Ahmed, I think part of what it is that I think it's disingenuous to say that, there's no crowd politics going on in Liberia. That's what's going on. We're not sitting here. I'm not sitting here trying to re-legislate what Boyka did. I've done enough of that. I rejected the fact that he coalesced with Prince Johnson. There cannot be any more vociferous critic of Prince Johnson than I on this show. I have rejected it. I have rejected Cummings coalescing with the likes of Louis Brown, who was a party chairman, my party chairman. These guys were my mentors. I rejected that. I rejected George Weah working with Joe Howard Taylor. But tonight, that's not what this is about. This is pre-election show. That's why I keep posting. You're on the wrong show. I think you're just on the wrong show. What we're here doing now, we're analyzing what is going on and what's going to happen tomorrow. So what we're saying, what I'm contending here, and I'm going to keep on that theme, and I don't deviate, I am saying that right now, the opposition has a slight momentum. And this opposition now is capable of beating George Weah by a very slim margin. And I don't care what Mr. Blamo says, George Weah has the capacity to steal this election. He has stolen the Liberian people money. What is to say that he's not going to steal the Liberian people vote? He's going to steal this election, and that's going to be the recipe for violence. And so we have to be ready for that. And we don't have the police. We don't have the governmental authority to stop that violence. And that's what we should be talking about. And I'm sitting here talking about, well, they didn't talk about the economy. Charles Taylor didn't talk about economy, and they voted him anyway. Charles Taylor talked about nothing, and the people said, you killed my ma, you killed my pa. Were you not in Liberia at the time Charles Taylor won that election? I bet you were. But it was crowd with Charles Taylor. So what we're talking tonight is the fact that tomorrow is election. We're not re-legislating.
Why are you getting all that extra time and we can't get it?
That's what I'm trying to say. You guys got to keep time here, please.
He is just speaking, man. He is just speaking.
Yes, sir. So, Blamo keeps saying, he keeps coming back to me saying, George Weah is not going to steal it. I understand your support for the CDC. I understand that. But I believe that George Weah is enough of a thief to steal this election, and he's going to put our country in danger. I'm afraid.
Yeah, Dennis, I'm sorry.
I forgive you for insulting the president.
Hold on.
You guys got to keep time here. Like, if you give somebody time to speak, you got to give them time, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes to speak, or else we're going to... All right.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes going forward. I will keep the time. Let's look at the voters. We talk about the candidates. Let's look at the voters. And just before we get to the voter, let me show you some numbers here. 2.4 million registered voters. Of that number, 1.237 thousand, or 1,237,000 plus are women, slightly above the number for men. So it's like women will be deciding this thing heavily. So let's look at the voters. Let's look at their preparedness. We saw already, we're saying pre-election violence. Are they prepared? Would they be marking a lot of invalid votes? Do they know what they're doing? Have they been prepared by their political parties how to vote? Have they been trained to avoid violence? What are some of the, and what their turnout will look at like tomorrow all over the country? And what would that mean? Mr. Blamo, let me start with you. We're looking at voters now.
Looking at the voters, whether is young people and whether is women and the men, my prediction is nobody going to win this election in the first round. And I believe in the people. I believe that at this point, the stakes are too high for people to steal the election, as the Honorable Gentleman seemed to be determined to say. I believe that the Liberian people will stand up, and the first round will be no, there will be no victory for any of these candidates, and reason will prevail, because you will have to form a coalition, and that might be a very good thing for Liberia, because in a coalition, the parties have to give up something, and they have to take in something.
The question is, are the voters prepared to conduct or participate in the election as they should? Did they get the right education from their political leaders, from the National Election Commission? Were the voters prepared to participate as they should? That's the question.
Well, that question is old. The voters in Liberia would never be prepared. They don't. The system does not allow proper preparation. The nomination process is fraud. Even the presidential system, imperial presidency, is not worth the fight. It doesn't guarantee democracy. You are asking a system that is an incorrect system for a correct standard. That would not happen.
So what needed to be done, Mr. Blamo, if I may, what needed to be done for these voters to be prepared?
I said it from the beginning of the show. There are three levels. There is the pre-election, pre-voting. There's the voting, and the after voting. In the pre-voting, the education was not there for the citizen education, and the parties have not made sufficient reconciliation. They are bitterly against. They are fighting each other.
When you say citizen education, what are you talking about specifically? Break this thing down for us.
When we talk about citizen education, we are talking about educating the people how to resolve conflict. We're talking about educating the people about the voting rules. We are talking about educating people how to assemble. We are talking about the security factors. All that is far beyond Liberia to provide.
All right.
So the people are not prepared. We have what we have.
Thank you. And James, do you agree with Mr. Blamo that Liberians are not prepared as they should in participating in the elections? So if you agree with him, what needed to be done that was not done actually?
James.
Look, I have to say I was distracted, Sonny. I certainly, of course, we'll have to agree with him that much needed to be done to have the voters fairly informed and educated in terms of their rights and roles in the election. That wasn't the case. Much could have been done. For example, look, it's just so sad, man. And Sonny, for example, when the election commission chairperson appeared at the legislature and was questioned by DeLon on their readiness and other things. And she was like, oh, by September 18th, we will be putting up the FRR. And it turned out not to be true at all. And she had to be taken to court. Up to this day, she has not been able to do that. And the most hurtful part about that is that she was very arrogant. She was like, we didn't promise, it's not by law. And on social media, we had a whole lot of documentation that came from her where she had to, atomize, action item on a list to be done for the publication of the FRR. Very arrogant. And then the next day or so, she came and apologized. And then said from now on, we'll be having daily press briefing to inform the Liberian people. And that was, it turned out to be another lie. There had not been press conference since then until last night. So when Mohammed speaks of
So Lab, before you get to that's the National Election Commission that did not really demonstrate preparedness and educating the voters. What's about the political parties and the political leaders? Did they do a good job in preparing their own voters and helping their fellow citizens to be prepared for these elections?
Well, again, it boils down to whose responsibility is it in the first place. It's the government. Okay. And it's when they were pushed against the war, I think Brother Ahmed Salif, they didn't know that the Election Commission recently reported that they didn't have all the money from the government, millions of dollars, still left out to be provided to the Election Commission, but that had been kept to themselves, and they were pushed against the wall when it was clear that they have failed to perform their role. Was that we didn't have the money. What should we do? This is the failure of government. Like Mohammed was saying, we're talking about logistics. If the government is going to be taking pickups and other things to give it to a paramount chief for election, paramount chief and town chief and the zone chief, and not providing cars to the police or the election commission and failing to provide education, the government itself has interest in the outcome of the election. And if it doesn't fund the election commission sufficiently, that should be made a national issue. If the election commission in apparent connivance with the government is mute on that issue until it's pushed against the wall, to me that doesn't help with education of the voters. Now Dennis was asking about the role of females, of the women. And the women are slightly more than the men in the election. Of course, I think we have about 3 female VPs and 2 female presidential candidates. For example, I'm sorry that Brother Carter was talking about tribalism. I don't think it didn't come from me about issue of tribalism and things, but we're talking about selection from NEMA and things. You have, say, Charlene Blumskin selected to be VP to Cummings, and she's a lady. She could help a lot to do things, but you select a lady who will go to her country and cannot speak her language, the local language, to relate. Then when you talk, they say it's not tribalism. Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, the man went to England, became a lawyer, went back home, and he knew he would be a leader. He asked himself, what do I need to do? He said that one thing he needed to do was to be able to speak to every citizen of Singapore. So he went and learned. He found out that Chinese was very important. He learned it. And then he found out no, it's in Malay. He went and learned that. He learned all of those to run to win. And then when you try to say tribalism, it's not tribalism. It's just a strategy required for you to win election. So it's not tribalism at all. And she is there. She certainly is promising. But does she have the elements, the requisite elements? I would say no.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Mr. Carter. Getting the voters ready, because I agree the National Election Commission had a statutory responsibility to do a lot. Even the preparation of the election staff. You guys remember they were even protesting for their late staffing, right, for training. It was chaotic. And now here we are, we're not even sure how well prepared they are to conduct this election. And I was very late, I think just day before yesterday, I saw a video from the National Election Commission. They even misspelled Tuesday. They spelled it almost like Thursday. They have to give an excuse for that. I mean, our people prepare to participate in the elections to avoid invalid votes and all that, my friend?
Yes, sir.
You're laughing? This is serious.
That is a great question. And I will go back, as I said, sometime when I'm talking, I like to give historical context. Forget the voter education. The education of the country itself, the literacy rate in the country itself is very high. So that would translate to the education, the understanding of somebody with a high literacy rate being able to understand voting. And if the candidate understood that aspect of it, they would have spent more time at a video, social media, or in these villages and campaign trail, taking a voter card and being able to demonstrate to the illiterate people that even Mamusu in whatever town she's in, making her to understand how do you vote. There are different voting options, how to do that, right? Yes, I agree that the sole responsibility, the majority of the responsibility of these voters behaving in a proper way is upon the president, but also in these instances, what we're seeing, the crowd being rallied and there's violence, usually these candidates are supposed to set the example, right? We're a young, depending on what part of history you want to look at in terms of democratically, we're a young democracy or a rebirth of a young democracy, right? So these parties that are coming ahead, if there are any missteps in the campaign processes, like the release of the voter rolls taking too long, I expected them to, hey, file a lawsuit. Yes, we understand the justices. You might say they may have been planted by the president, but file a lawsuit. You can join together and file a lawsuit. It's not the fact that you will win that lawsuit, but it's the fact that the next people that will come after you, they will see that, hey, if these things are happening, these are the process you take. Even though we're in a corrupt society, you may not actually get the better outcome, but this is what you should do. The same thing with I'm going off tangent here a little bit, but I will come back. The same thing with the violence. When those violence happened, the president didn't say anything. The opposition is supposed to get together and hold the president's feet to the fire. It is not to say that you don't want that you're going to expect any result, but to show the next generation that are coming after you that if you want to improve your democracy, these are the things that you do. You follow, you build the institution that the next people coming after you will enjoy. Now, in terms of the voter registration, the voter education, as I said before, we have a high illiteracy rate in the country, right? And I have not seen any candidate doing enough work in terms of educating the people, right? Educating the people. I will say one last thing and I'll yield on this. I wanted to also speak to the fact that we keep saying that the president might rig the election. There is high level at stake. I'm sure you guys read you read the statement from the U.S. State Department, right? There are right now other members from the region, ECOWAS region, AU, that are in there making sure that we have a fair, free and fair election. So we cannot, as a country that just came out of war 20 years ago, we cannot be perpetuating these narratives, even if they're there. We're supposed to be putting out messages that, hey, we want to see a free and fair election. But if we keep perpetuating that, even if the president is, is trying to play on that, we are actually enabling him. We're enabling him to be able to carry on those things. But I believe Liberia has a lot at stake. There's AU in the country. There is other regional ECOWAS body in the country, and there's international people in our country to make sure that that campaign is held properly. In addition to that, every candidate, most of I would say the top four have poll watchers. They have, I think some of you guys talked about them. So how can we now look at all of those factors and continue to perpetuate this narrative that there's going to be stealing? If there's any stealing, the doubt that I have is that, hey, he can strangulate a neck. So if there's a runoff, they won't be able to do their work. He can strangulate the police force, so we won't have enough police force on the ground to ensure that we don't have violence on during the campaign. So those are the things that I see. But in terms of the voter registration, the voter education, there is minimum that was done in the process from all the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Comrade Mohammed Sharif, the funding also got to do with the preparation. The government did not fund the National Election Commission way ahead of time. And the government knew that this was a crucial election. We can hold them responsible for that. I want you to speak about the opposition. The opposition too knew that the National Election Commission was not getting the funding. And they sat there and said, well, maybe a miracle will happen. Did the opposition do a good job here? Because if you look at the legislature, the opposition dominate. I know they called the National Election Commission boss, and they had information. They even draft the budget. I mean, they debate the budget. How much money did the opposition even put in the budget for the conduct of the election compared to what they allotted for themselves?
Okay.
I want you to speak to that.
Ansony, let me give you another sort of a backdrop, more like an anecdote, but it's a backdrop. So Kabina Jana's impeachment was spearheaded by, people in George Weah's party with the acquiescence of George Weah. And so what ended up happening was, who voted for the impeachment of Kabina Jana? it was these very opposition people. So instead of rejecting the CDC, they've supported Kabinejani's impeachment. So they were members of the opposition, along with George Weah's partisans, that impeached Kabinejani. So you can say it was bipartisan. So those guys, with the exception of Kamini Wisa and a few very principled people, right? So that's what you have. You have in the legislature, you have the opposition majority that it seems sometimes that they don't know their own roles. And so this is on them too. It's on the opposition. So now you're going into battle, right? You're going into battle that you're not prepared. So the opposition is going into this. I would not have gone in like this, but the way they're going in to this process is already flawed. The playing field, I don't care what Giver says, the playing field is skewed. The playing field is not level. So the opposition is at a disadvantage. But you know what's going on? Something momentous is going on. The people have picked up on that. And so what you're seeing, the groundswell of support for the opposition is a rejection of all of the fraudulent activities, all of the fraudulent behavior. George Weah refusal to fund the Elections Commission is by design. It's not by any, it's by design because he has interest in the outcome of the election. So what interest does George Weah have to fund the Election Commission if he knows that, he's very shaky in this election? So he has an interest. So he doesn't have interest in funding the Election Commission. And so to that point, the opposition should have held, and you're absolutely correct, that question is well in place, the government accountable. They should have held their feet to the fire. It's just like on one of the shows last week, I mentioned where George Weah was supposed to do a flyover, all these muddy areas, because Liberia right now is a muddy mess under George Weah. He doesn't know what to do. And so, how is the opposition sitting there and the minister of Public Works is not being held, is not being called in front of the legislature? How is that even happening? But sometimes the coalition that they built in the legislature is almost as if both the opposition and the ruling establishment in the legislature, they're all worried about their pockets. And so when it comes to that, they all have a common ground. When it comes to just the brown envelope legislation, they all form a common bond. And so that is what's troubling us. Your question is well in place. They are supposed to hold the government feet to the fire. They did not do that in this case. And sometimes when you do that, it can cost you mightily.
I want to make a point. And basically, the Honorable German is flip-flopping. On one hand, everything that's wrong is George Weah. Then he flip-flop and said, no, the opposition voted for these bad things. Now he's saying that George Weah is the person who approved budgets. So George Weah was supposed to approve the election budget, not the legislature. He has already forgiven the so-called corrupt legislator that he just accused, and single-handedly put the executive and the legislative branch together. You see, when we talk on this show, we have to be realistic.
It goes to the chiefs.
Correct. That is a definition. That is a good definition of a complex situation. There's no gray area. There's no black and white.
No, the people will only be defeated if they allow themselves to be defeated. The problem in Liberia is a problem that is shared. We have a legislature that have opposition figures that could have stood their grounds on the funding of this election.
Can I inject something real quick?
The election commission wasn't forthcoming. The election commission was still making it to look that the government was going to give the money. I mean, definitely there is a collaboration between the government and the election commission, because
can I say something?
Commission is a stool.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to also quickly touch on.
Let me say this real quick.
Hold on, Gabriel. but we want to bring in our callers too. So if you are watching the show, this is our election eve discussion. The number to call is 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. I just wanted to also make sure that because we've seen violence already, do we have the security law enforcement ready to
Let me let,
do
let
those
me
things that we want them to do?
let
We
me let
have
me say
callers
this real
standing by.
quick.
So quickly, half minute each to talk about Supreme Court and law enforcement. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Let me inject this
Half
real
a
quick
minute.
before we jump into that, right? I listen. I agree the historical context from where we're coming from and where we are right now. But what we also have to look at, because of the historical context of where we came from and where we are, we now have to be preparing. That should now be the playbook that we look at and say these things, how we handle elections, were not the right way. So moving forward, how do we ensure that the next crops of leaders coming behind us should be conducting election? If the president is, we know that he has the budget in hand, the treasury to fund NEC and all these security apparatus to ensure that. If he's not doing that, if I were a candidate in that race, I will sue him to the Supreme Court. Right now, there's a
Gabriel,
chance.
elections are tomorrow. So let's talk
No, no, no.
what's going to happen.
Wait. I understand. I may not win. It, that should
Yeah,
have happened long time. That should have. I may not win,
right.
but the next people that come in, they will see that and say, okay, if the president in this campaign season, somebody's not doing the right thing, even with the same thing with campaign financing. If you're not doing the right thing, disclosing your campaign financing, you hold people feet to the fire. You sue them. Let the Supreme Court decide that.
Look, Carter,
Right?
there are about 20 political parties. The United Party has registered the highest number of litigations with the court system in Liberia regarding this election. And sometimes you don't want to get, pegged onto just going to court for every minor thing. But the United Party is on record for having or engaging the court system with the highest number of cases than any other political party.
Thank you. I still want us to go back to it's tomorrow, gentlemen. Everything that we've said, Gabriel, everything you say, how is it going to play out tomorrow? I want you to use 30 seconds to talk about that. How is that going to play out tomorrow?
You want me to go first?
Yes, go
Yeah.
first. I want you to end with that.
As far as everything that we've seen so far, as I said, I'm disappointed of how everything has ended up. That we dove into campaign, this whole crowd politics. But here's what I would say, right? Regardless of the crowd politics, right? I think there's a silent group of silent voters in our country that we don't know who they're going to vote for. There's also the undecided voters, the people that are over the fence. At one point, they were higher. I don't know if the campaign, the candidate did enough to sway them on their side, whether they use crowd or they use policies. That's yet to be determined. There's also the other factor that we like to deny, but we know it is there. It is the international interest. When I mean international interest, the interest of the U.S., right? The meaning that if among the candidate, who do they think will help them carry out their economic interests? We don't like to address that, but that is there. That could play into everything else that
Let me bring you
we're
back.
looking
So
at.
how is
Right?
that going to play out
So
tomorrow?
as far as how is that going to play out, that is yet to be determined. I think this is going to be the most I can tell you. I don't want to cast any. I think we're going to go to the second round as we expect, and in the second round, this is when we're going to see who is an effective strategist in terms of forming correlation, negotiating, and bringing working deals. That's what we're going to see. But I think this is going to go to a runoff. But I will leave it on there. Thank you.
30 seconds, Mr. Blambo. Let's look at law enforcement security. What do we
I
expect
think
tomorrow?
law enforcement, security are all in one package. And once you have a political system that is partly democratic and partly autocratic, there will be vulnerability to problems. And our institutional fabric, we don't have the requirement to channel grievances. So our program, our electoral program will be handicapped. So tomorrow we're gonna the people will do their best, given the circumstances they find themselves in, to have the election that they can have. And right now it's pointing to no victory. But our judicial and our security system is not sufficient carry out the kind of election we hope for.
Do you see violence tomorrow?
We may, but we believe that our law enforcement agency will listen to our program, and other advice from politicians will step it up a little bit.
And you think the law enforcement agencies are ready?
Well, our law enforcement agency is not sufficiently equipped, but they are ready in their own ways. We have very trained military and police officers in Liberia today.
They are
but whether they are equipped to address the issues at hand is something different. I mean, those guys are underpaid, but our training has increased.
Thank you. Mr.
Right.
Lasso, let's look at things will go to the Supreme Court. Do we expect impartial, fair adjudication of these matters in case they end up there?
I have less confidence in that, but I do believe that all conflicts should be resolved in the court system, whatever it is. No conflict was the life of any single Liberian, Dennis. I have to say this, the rule of law is important. You just saw on the video, maybe you didn't display all of that, with a security officer instigating partisans from the ruling party to go attack the other people. That's not just fine. We believe there will be voter intimidation, as was done in that video tomorrow, even with all the scheming going on, such as the press conference held by Jefferson recently, where they paid the guy, typical Franzamito kind of episode that was kind of reenacted over there, just so as to set the basis to, in fact, commit such act in the process of the election. That's not fine. But look, Dennis, this is one point I want to say.
There was something from
Yeah, maybe you didn't see that press conference. Yeah, it was very much, and a typical case. But look, I want to appeal to Liberians, mainly my fellow citizens from Bon County and general the Liberians, to appeal to them to go to vote. They should not resist. They should not be intimidated. It is their rights. Let them go to vote, and the election outcome will reflect what they will put in the ballot. There will be. Because we have a lot of international observers available to observe that election. You have parties who have pool watchers and things. So you go there and cast a vote, and you'll be able to vote and come back home safely.
We'll take a few calls, and I don't know what these observers can do. Just watch us hurt each other. But let's take a few calls here, Mr. Saliba. I want you to speak to that. The first call here is from Tubman.
Yeah, am I on?
Yes, sir. You are live. You're 1 minute, please.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Well, gentlemen, I want to say thank you. I've been listening to the show for a very long time. I've been on. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Blambo down there. It's a big brother. I work along with him out there. Very eloquent, and just giving you a shout out to Blambo. Thank you, Mr. Blambo. Well, my point I also want to say, I want to condemn all election violence in our beloved country. We don't want to entertain violence. We hope our people go to the pool tomorrow and then exercise their rights. And we look forward to see the outcome of our election. And Dennis, I want to bring a point out. You see, I'm sorry, one of your panelists just went off. Okay, he came back. Mohammed. You see, Mohammed, your thoughts are not coherent. Because I'm saying this because
Dennis, you can't allow somebody to talk to someone.
No, it's okay.
You made mention about the violence in at the University of Liberia, and I was on the show that day. I make a point. You are one of those who are preaching the violence. You supported the violence on the university campus, and I brought that to your attention. We cannot sit over here in the United States in the comfort of our bedrooms, of our living rooms, and then preach violence, advocate violence in our country. And when these things
what specifically are you referring to? That he supported violence.
Then I think you were the monitor. Moderator on the show at that time. Mr. Sherry's was strongly backing the violence on the university campus by the students. He was strongly backing that.
The student against whom?
And he was even against because when the representative went on the campus, he said the representative had no right to. Yeah, you remember that show, right? You remember that show.
Dennis,
I don't remember the comment, but go ahead.
Yeah, but exactly. But what I'm just saying here is we cannot sit here. We cannot sit here and preach violence and entertain this kind of comment. He's saying here that the election will be fraudulent. The president is going to steal the election. You inciting violence.
No.
The people are not even going to the election yet. And you just said it, you're telling people say the election going to be stolen. Mr. Barker going to win the election. What are you coming up with all those? Those are just accusations.
I don't agree with Sharif.
All right, let me make the last
You will come in.
Okay, those are not incoherent, though. Those are not incoherent. You can say advocate for the rights of students to go in early campus.
Dennis, since you invoke my name,
yeah, hold on, let me finish.
He went to the left. The president has done his work, and he's campaigned to the left and breadth of our country. Your candidate sat down there. He went to his bases. That's all. The president campaign.
How long can we give this CDC man, Dennis? Look, go to.
Thank you. Let me bring on Mr. Elvis Morris. Mr. Sherry, please mark that down. Elvis, you are live. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. John. I want to agree with the last caller. I think Mr. Sharif has been very irresponsible in his utterances tonight. Because exactly what he's doing. I think Mr. John, you try to call him to order. You're spewing the same rhetoric that Joseph Boyka is spewing. As an intellectual, somebody who is educated, you should be calling for calm and for peace. But instead, you're kind of spewing divisive rhetoric here tonight.
Who put caskets on their head? Who put caskets on their head?
People who every other Liberian is against. Don't say that.
Who put caskets on their head?
Hold on, Mr.
Sharif, let him finish. Let him land.
In your earlier statement, you said almost the entire country, they don't consider Mandingos to be Liberian. That's not true. A lot of people who have a lot of affection for Mandingos. Don't just paint yourself as a victim. That incident that happened was isolated. It wasn't the whole country against the Mandingo people.
It's not isolated.
Isolated incident that happened. And then third, when you're saying that this election will be rigged, this is something that you want to use for backup. In case George Weah win this election, you would dismiss it and say, "Oh, that election was rigged. George Weah didn't really win that election. They rigged it." That's a loser mentality. Because people who know they're probably going to lose an argument, they always find a backup as a crutch to hold on to. You're intellectual. Use your intellect to make your points. Don't use allegations and speculations on this platform. It's very disheartening and almost infuriating for some of us who are listening to you.
Hey, look,
I have much more to say, but I'll leave it. I think you're ready for the show tonight with your situations.
Dennis, I gotta come here and answer these CDC people. All right.
Thank you. Let me take the last
tactics.
I gotta answer these CDC people, including Blambo.
Let me take the last call out from Mr. Flomo Livingstone.
Yeah, great show, Mr. Dennis. Thank you for the show. Look, again, that's why I'm telling LeBron not to elect any young leader because they are already feeling the LeBron people. The LeBron people should not elect any young leader.
What do you mean? What you mean young? What do you mean young? What age you talking about?
No, but according to most CDC, it says you're a young man. So what can I say?
Come on, people.
So what I'm trying to say is, they shouldn't elect a young person like, for example, like Joe Weah in our 40s or in our 50s because the man hasn't addressed anything in the Republic of Liberia, including the drugs, the incident that just happened. And that's not a leadership. My question to Mr. Carter is, according to him, he said, the lack of Prince Johnson and Jeremiah Kun cannot be a good leader. I know you support Mr. Comey. Can you tell me that Charlene can be a good president? Again, we should start to do that because she's a leader. She can be a good leader. We shouldn't be thinking like that because the former president of Guinea was a good lawyer, but we see how he run our country. So we should stop thinking that because someone is educated, they can be a good leader. We should stop thinking that way, Mr. Carter. If you're a leader, if you believe in Mr. Comey messages, if the Republic of Liberia elect him, so be it. But don't say John Michael cannot be a good president and you say Charlie can be a good president.
We were all supporting all the leaders. We don't even know when they get elected what they would do. You cannot tell me when Mr. Comey began president, you tell like brought you to New York or something. So
Dennis, will I be able to respond to this, gentlemen?
So let's stop criticizing our poster. The person cannot be a good leader. I don't know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Will I
you,
be
Mr.
able to
Livingston.
respond to him later?
No,
Please.
last time it was my turn to speak, but I
No, I said later. I know. I understand.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
later. Yeah.
Mohammed got enough on his plate.
Yeah, let me see to Mohammed.
Yeah, so this group is led by this chorus of malcontents. There are a bunch of CDC people sitting around the United States. They are able to go to their fridge tonight and drink cold water. Some of them who drink beer and stuff like that. I don't drink those things. So they are able to do that. The people in Liberia tonight are not able to do that. Mr. Blamo sitting right here. He's able to go to the fast food joint and get a chicken, hamburger. The people in Monrovia tomorrow morning are not able to do that. So I condemn any sort of violence. I'm a victim of violence. And so when I see violence, I have to condemn it. I was in the University of Liberia. I was nearly killed in the Civil War. Somewhere in Lofa County that I took refuge. We have to run away and cross the border into Sierra Leone. The rebels were going to kill us. So I condemn violence. George Weah, throughout his presidency has been violent. And so I condemn him for being a violent president. That's what he is. That's what he's manifested in this election. And that's what we're going to see in this election. And we have to be very careful. We have to send messages to all Liberians to be very vigilant, because this president is going to steal the election, thereby giving grounds for violence. He started this thing. He started killing people. He started beating university students. It's not Mohammed Sharif sitting over here. I don't have any powers. I have the intellect to think. And people who think like George Weah, they probably don't have the intellect. But I do have the intellect to think better. And to think for the Liberian people. I condemn any sort of violence, and I condemn those who support George Weah in perpetuating violence against the Liberian people.
Thank you. Gabriel, you have a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick response to the gentleman. My comparison of Jeremiah Kuhn as a VP, as being picked as a VP, is not, this is twofold, right? One is that we can look at experiences, right? You pick somebody based on the experience, but that's one, right? But you also look at the President Association. For me, everything I look at in this election, I look at it from an economic lens and how impactful it's going to be to Liberian. You pick a candidate.
Is that what the voters looking at?
Let me finish. That's what I said. Let me finish. We have an illiterate voter. Some of them don't.
You sure? You sure we do?
Of course. I mean, look at the population. We can get to that, right? I look at everything from an economic lens, right? I think Mr. Seri just said, every Liberian needs this ability to self-actualize. You pick a candidate as a VP who's associated with somebody who is sanctioned. Third of your budget comes from external donor sources. The United States government and everybody else will not do business with anybody who is sanctioned. That means the moment you do that, you threaten part of that donors fund being cut away from your budget. What is that going to do to you economically? It's going to cripple you. We know that when the war was over, $429 million was pledged to Liberia, but it was withheld by the United States government because the sanction were on Liberia. You guys need to know these things. So this is what I'm looking at it from, not to say, oh, because the guy is experienced or he's inexperienced. Jeremiah Kuhn doesn't have any experience. We can go to that part and we can.
He also doesn't have sanction.
Let me say that we can go to that point and compare him with Charlene, but it's his association with Prince Johnson and how the United States government, other external partner. Let me finish. Are going to look at that and how that is going to threaten the external source of the budget that we get that's going to cripple Liberia and impact the rest of the Liberian. That's what I'm looking at. So it's not so much about the guy. His experience we can go to the.
Thank you, but let me speak a little bit. Jeremiah Kuhn or Count. Jeremiah Count has won elections 3 times. So his experience in winning elections is more than Mr. Buckeye. Mr. Buckeye has won none on his own. Jeremiah Count is a businessman. who pulled himself up by the bootstraps. So his supporters will argue that he has more business experience and acumen compared to Mr. Cummings, who did not do business in Liberia. He worked in the corporate world, right? Also, Mr.
Are you making an argument? Do you want me to respond to that?
Hold on.
Dennis.
No, because that's a great statement you make. We can respond to that. Because I think that's how was his statement.
No, Carter, those are facts, though.
Correct.
Jeremiah counts
No. Okay, let me respond to Dennis. Let me respond to Dennis.
I didn't finish. I wanted to give.
I would like to respond to Dennis.
But let him finish.
Please.
Dennis,
go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Okay, so you really want to compare Jeremiah Kun with Mr. Cummings? Are you trying to make that argument?
I'm talking business.
Mr. Carter, you need to
even in business. Are you trying to do that?
Election winning record.
No. Are you sticking with business? Or are we going to election winning?
No. His
come on, yeah, even in business. So
why
do you know Mr. Cummings' record? Let me finish now. Okay.
But you don't want to speak now. Okay, so it was my turn.
I'm responding to.
Cummings doesn't have a single home in Liberia. He lives in a public.
Go ahead and say what you got to say. Then I'll respond to Dennis.
Go ahead, Mr. Salif.
Well, it's clear. Good. Please, Ahmed.
No, Mr. Carter, man, I'm not here to speak over you or anything, but a debate has a format, right? You make your point and you make categorical statement, others will want to respond, just like if I make categorical statement but you or your statement, you want to respond. I'm just saying it's fact, the facts are there. Yes, Jeremiah Kans is in politics. Yes, they're all corrupt Liberian politicians. They all self-aggrandize and they take the steroids. So what they do with the legislature, they all are guilty of that. But this man is known for doing business, a well-established business person in Liberia, someone who grew up in the wartime, went to college, did business on the roadside until he really established himself. He has won election. The people of Nima County have elected him repeatedly. So you cannot discount that experience and say, oh, more than Mr. Cummings. What has Mr. Cummings done in Liberia?
Can I come in?
We talk about this great corporate experience, Coca-Cola in America, Nigeria. It's just like, maybe it's true, but there's euphoria about it. The man have to demonstrate to us.
Can I?
Yeah, let Mr. Carter speak.
Let him finish.
You stop ganging on Mr. Carter.
Let him finish. I will respond to that. Let him finish.
And so I'm saying, look, Mr. Cummings is a decent man. He seems to be, but I think you all put him on a certain pedestal. And he hasn't really proved himself inside Liberia with the Liberian people, neither in the diaspora nor at home.
Exactly.
That is the job you fail to do. And when we point it out, and then you all just get into, and yes, so you have to show the evidence, and then that way the argument will make itself.
The man doesn't have a single woman in Liberia.
I think Mr. Lassa wanted to come in as well. Let him come in.
Mr. Carter, go ahead.
That is not true. That is not true. You want to know the man home?
At the apartment complex.
Let Mr. Lassa come in. Mr. Lassa, come in. Please go ahead. Make your point.
No, go ahead, Mr. Carter. I want Mr. Sieh to.
He owned the building.
He doesn't. It's a business.
Let me say this. I don't want to be caught up. That's what I want to give Mr. Lassa the chance. Let him finish.
No, you have to tell Mr. Blambo. He is one inviting response.
Yeah, he's inviting side talk. So
correct.
Okay, all right. So this
maybe he's spokesman for Blambo too.
Let me
go for your CDC.
Let me say this. I know some of us in this country we kind of underestimate the achievement that Mr. Cummings has. But it is okay because most people in this country will never, Liberian in this, not even just Liberian, most people in this country will never get to that level, right? Forget what he was able to achieve in this country. Forget that. What he was able to do in Africa, from South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, the ex-president of South Africa. Do you know who gave him his first Coca-Cola plantation, his factory? Do you know what he was able to do in Nigeria as a business person? Now, I understand this narrative you guys like to have that, to do business is different from running politics. Do you know how complicated it is to navigate businesses in Africa? And to be able to do that across Africa and succeed, and you come in to compare somebody who's doing it in a 5.2 million people country, 5.2 million people country, compared to somebody who did it on a continental stage? Like, are you guys really making an argument? Listen, the reason why I think most of you don't understand Mr. Cummings is because the level to which he has amounted, I don't think some of you have a fraction to that level. I would say this
Oh
categorically.
wow.
Exactly.
No,
Really?
let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. I beg you, guys. I beg you.
Mr. Carter was talking about
I pray to God to never reach that level. To be a self-proclaimed billionaire and not have a single home in my country.
See,
Let
that's
me
the
let me
elitist.
let me finish,
That
guys.
is not true.
Let me finish.
And the
Please.
elections are held in Liberia, man, not in South
Hey,
Africa,
Niswa.
not in
Hey,
Nigeria.
Niswa.
And you
Dennis,
don't know
can you
everybody's.
moderate him?
You are rating business
I was giving you
experience.
guys. I was giving you
The
guys a
man
chance
has.
to speak. I was giving you guys a chance to speak. I'm speaking now. You're talking over me, right? The reason why I think most people don't understand the magnitude of that, because some of us, if I look at people in Liberia that I want to aspire to, he is one of them. In Africa, is Tony, the guy who owns UBA. I am a VP at one of the
Really?
biggest banks in this country. To get to that, you see my hair? I lost all of my hair. It is not easy working at. No, I'm serious. You're laughing at it, but it's the stress.
In
And to do that,
admiration, in admiration.
let me finish. To do that at the executive level, this is at a VP level. Go bring that to the executive level and do that without an inch of corruption, and be taken to the executive board where you oversee the strategic decision of the country, of a company of $200 billion company. And you are telling me you're comparing that to somebody who, I don't know what type of business you have in a $5.2 million people country. Like, I
Thank you.
understand we want to
He
compete,
got some
but you
shops
got to
in
be
Nima.
fair. You got to be fair when you're
Mr.
doing your
Blanco,
comparison.
no,
Don't compare Mr. Cummings with Jeremiah Kuhn. Please, don't do that.
thank you.
There are a lot of Liberian people, young Liberian people listening, coming or listening to you guys. Don't do
Thank
that to
you.
yourself.
That's
Thank you.
condescending, man.
Thank
That's
you.
Elections are held
It is condescending.
It is
It's very
condescending. Dennis,
condescending.
we have to call it what it is, man.
How is that condescending?
The elections are held in Liberia. The Liberian people are the ones who will determine who's qualified, who has done, and what has accomplished what.
Then so be it.
Then so be it. Leave it with a Liberian.
Exactly.
Don't
Then so be
crucify the
it.
man on a business level,
I
and you
don't
don't
care
want
if
to
you are
hear
condescending.
what he achieved.
I'm here to suggest that we haven't accomplished certain levels, therefore we don't understand. I said you already know all of us and know our
You
accomplishments.
guys
what we've
compare
done.
Mr. Cummings to
What,
Jeremiah Kuhn. I said,
what about
don't do
Sherry, who
that.
said we have no intellect? Sherry
Don't
came on
do
the
that.
show and said
Don't
we
do
have
that.
no
That's a
intellect.
disrespect.
He the only person got intellect. You didn't hear him?
Don't do that.
Dennis, you want to also talk about election
I challenge any one of you to show me where Cummings.
Let me show our
Go
schedule
look
for
at the
the
Cummings
our
Africa
schedule for the
Foundation
week.
and what he was supposed to do.
My name is Abena Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Country, to educate, elevate, and promote. Focus on Liberia. For Liberia, for Liberia, yeah.
This is our election eve discussion. Mr. Salif, let's go to just quickly 30 seconds. We're talking about the
international election observers. Look,
Yes.
let me tell you, I'm here to tell you now that the international election observers have very little infinitesimal impact on the outcome of the elections. Here's why. These people have a form. I've been an international election observer before. I've done the training, I've been there, I've seen it, I've seen them in action, and I've done the job. They have a form. They don't interfere. They come around, they observe the general atmosphere, is what is the road poster on the wall, people in line properly, the election administrators are doing the papers all right, and they document all that stuff, transmit to the head office. If there's some commotion, somebody say, "Whoa, you my ballot, you did that, I saw you put 2 there." It's not their job to stop them, to put a mouth in it, nothing. They write it down. They write it down. This is after the fact. That's when they report, they come and call a press conference and give a certain statement, talk about what they observed, what they saw. Maybe somebody They won't say somebody cheating, might say some irregularities, and here's why, here's the evidence, it was generally credible and not credible. Those are the kinds of things. Also, they're there to send some kind of message. People see them around in the vehicles, they have identifiers, they're walking around, they say, oh, the international observers here. Maybe that will serve as a deterrent, but to expect them that they're actually there to say, excuse me, well, we see the CDC people are causing commotion or Unity Party, we saw that's not their job. That is not their job. ECOWAS will support you before the election, towards funding, logistics, training, and then just generally using the good offices to talk to stakeholders, political parties, candidates, encourage them to conduct themselves in a certain way and things like that. And the AU observers, ECOWAS observer, European Union observers in the Carter Center. These are really generally the composition of who you will see around, milling around. But if it comes to whether or not there will be violence or people will not conduct themselves properly, somebody will stuff a ballot, somebody will manipulate a database or something like that, international observers have little role or impact on that.
Thank you. That will conclude our discussion tonight. We will now go to the closing statement. And what I want you to close on is like a preview. Tell me, like we are looking into Wednesday now, right? That it's Wednesday. So we want you to talk. Let's talk about preview and talk about the conduct, the turnout, the atmosphere, poll watchers, the tally sheet, voter turnout, possible result, and everything in between. You can do that within 60 seconds.
Dennis, if you don't mind, I've been very quiet and paying attention here. And I follow the discussion concerning Cummings and Cummings' experience and achievement and emphasis. Kun. Look, Jeremiah Kun, Liberian man will say, is the Liberian success story. Cummings' success is at a global level. Anyone who attempts to dismiss that is just deceiving themselves. That's the fact. Kun won election in Liberia 3 times. Dr. Tubana Tipote, I'm told at the age of 25, earned a PhD in the United States. One of the brightest Liberians we have come to know. He participated in election in Liberia. He did not win any.
Right.
Is Kun better than him? Is Kun smarter than him? Look, this idea that Kun is better, if anybody is suggesting that in any way, then I'm now understanding the discussion. I said, if you look at the Liberian contest, this is a young man who had a tough time when he was coming up, so soap, oil, fish, and many things, and he ended having a own business. That is a success if you're looking at it from the Liberian context. But when it comes to winning election, I don't think it's about strategy in Liberia.
So what's listen?
Voters in Liberia. Let me learn.
Ansony, this is how we go back.
I will learn. I will learn. I'm sure you observe how I've been so quiet all along, so I will learn.
Please go
all
ahead.
Right? So let's look at Mena Yeke Koluba. This guy is a disgrace by every standard. Do you think that guy is a representation of Liberia, of our values? But this guy won election against CDC. Will we say we should give him credit because the people decided to vote for him for some obvious reason? So he should be given credit? Kun should be given credit because the people of Nimba said, well, we'll vote for him. So he should be given credit. And let's say a Cummings is struggling and the people are not coming his way. So, we should see him as maybe he doesn't have the strategy or whatsoever. Lazar tried to participate in election recently. He pulled off because he
Mr.
saw
Sieh, you are missing the point, though.
No, let him finish. I think he has a beautiful
Mr.
logic. Let him
Lassa
That's
continue to. Is that how you guys want to do this discussion? Is that how you guys want to do? I've never interrupted anybody here.
Let him finish, Dennis, please.
All right. Lassa continue to emphasize that Cummings does not, you try to make the point that Cummings does not have a house in Liberia. What sense does it make? Is it a requirement by a constitution to participate in election? You must have a house?
Yes.
What is the reason he's even making that point?
Yes.
So, I mean, Cummings has businesses in Liberia. I'm not his mouthpiece. He has businesses in Liberia. His businesses might be even more than what Kun has in Liberia.
And he has a house. He has houses.
He has a house there. I don't know why they're making an argument.
I do not want to believe that Mr. Cummings, who have been living in Liberia for pretty close to 6 years now, with the resources he's blessed to have, will not have a house in Liberia. For a very intelligent man like Lassa to make that as a point and argument when it comes to election, that is beyond belief. Really?
No, Dennis.
So I will end.
Because the men share the house with black people. That's their problem.
I don't think we are closing here.
I will end. I will end to say.
Let him end. Let him land.
Lassa lauded the choosing of Kun. The choosing of Kun, that was a horrible decision.
Ooh.
That was a horrible decision. Kun is not a leader by any measure.
Wow.
We'll wait to see what happens.
It's a daily infrastructure.
Dennis, in all fairness, you want to give me a limited time to get response to the brother. First of all, he asked me as if he doesn't know or as if it is not true.
Mohammed called us, we have no intellect. And we didn't respond. Now the man talking something reasonable. You want to convince us that Cummings doesn't have a house.
Mr. Blama,
I don't want us to dwell with this house issue because it's really not the point I was making was if you dismiss count completely. So I was making the point that when it comes to winning offices, he won election 3 times. When it comes to business acumen, he's picked himself up by the bootstraps. Those are the connection of it. But go ahead, Lassa. Let's use her because
in all fairness, I'm seeing a suggestion. He asking me as if it is not legally or constitutionally required that in order to run for president, you need to own a home. It's a must. You must have a home and pay tax.
He has one. That's why he's being qualified.
And Cummings doesn't have any. I saw Cummings on video going to the apartment complex to prove that he owned a home in the place, only to discover that
he owns the entire building. Cummings owns the entire building.
Doesn't have to be solely owned.
It's a business owned by a group of men. It is called Sieh.
Does it have to be solely owned? Does the Constitution say
you have to give me?
Cummings is the sole owner. If you look at the property, he just named that.
That's a disruptor argument.
Let's leave that house.
We will know tomorrow. We will know tomorrow.
Yeah.
Correct. And secondly, Ansony tried to.
We got to close.
And so, what is the definition of whom? Lassa, what is a home?
At least then you must have made that your home is not an apartment complex.
It is still a home. It is still a home.
It's a home. He built a big building.
Ansony doesn't sound like he's in a closing mood because
for me, the fact that he's able to contest and he was qualified and
exactly.
If Mr. Lassa, your argument is you need to own a home to contest, then that closes the argument. That's why he's contesting.
Same as for Jeremiah Kun too, you know, for being selected as a leader. I mean,
let's move on. I don't think so. I want us to close. And let me start with Mr. Blamo. You're closing, and I said the conduct, the turnout, the atmosphere, the pool water, the talent sheets, possible result. Let's close on that, and you have 62 seconds.
Fellow Liberians, we have come to the end of the campaign season, and at this time, the violence in Liberia, we need to address them in a serious way. Notwithstanding, Liberians should know what is at stake here. They need to come out and vote. They should vote for their choice of candidates. Be not deceived by the rhetorics that Cummings doesn't have a home, and the rhetorics that George Weah killed everybody in Liberia. The legislative branch of government has a problem, like all the politicians in Liberia, but we have to choose the right people to rule our country. And that comes from the president all the way down. We need to make the right decisions, and we need to realize that there is no equal rights if we don't share power. If democracy is only meaningful if it provide health care, if it provide empowerment of the people, if it lift up the living standards of the people. So when we go out to the poll tomorrow, we should recognize what is at stake, and we should do the right thing. God bless Liberia.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif.
Yeah, so Dennis, it's been a fabulous debate. So once again, every time that I will say something that's not favorable to George Weah, you see Mr. Blambo and Chorus come after me. But look, I have a very, very thick skin. I've been in this game for a long, long time, and I'm not going anywhere. So if people in the CDC are very upset by what I say, brace for more, because if you call me back tomorrow, Dennis, on this show, on the election show, I will come back and share my opinion. I'm not wrong often, when I point these things out. And so what I'm pointing out is a warning to the Liberian people to be very careful about what is going to happen. So you asked for what's going to happen tomorrow. My prediction is, and real quick, I'm going to be very quick with this. My prediction is the turnout will be very high. Turnout is going to be high. It's going to be early morning, peaceful. Towards the end of the day, you're going to see some disturbances. The CDC is going to try to cheat, and so things are going to start peacefully, and then at the end of the day, it's not going to be. The police security, you asked that question, Dennis. At some point, we didn't address that much. We don't have this. We don't have the requisite security to deal with the situation. These guys are not competent. The government has underfunded them. They can't handle the task. You saw that video, Dennis. It was security people pointing out, go that way, they're that way. What kind of country is that? And then finally, you have a woman who's affiliated with the LNP who's, calling my dingoes in, ways that I cannot describe. And yet you have these CC, affiliates sitting in the United States under electricity, 24/7 electricity. They have their refrigerator full of food, and they want to sit here and support George Weah. Why aren't you guys, in Liberia sitting under the Weah regime? Why aren't you Black sitting there? Why are you and your people sitting there enjoying your regime that you elected? You're here for a reason. So I don't want to hear this nonsense.
Mr. Sharif, Mr. Salif.
And my prediction is I'll go with very high turnout. People are energized. Whether it's a protest vote, it's a referendum tomorrow, we'll see very high turnout. And of course, wherever there's high turnout in voter turnout, most likely you'll experience tension and skirmishes and, naturally. I'm just reading some posts online, some reporters, some analysts are going around and saying it's past 1 a.m. around Monrovia, Montserrado. What they're saying, people are already camping out, like people are forming lines already, right? And so therefore we can expect that the turnout will be very high. However, we will not know anything tomorrow. Our election night tomorrow, we will know nothing. The results. Now, we might start to see high turnout here, high turnout, those kinds of cosmetic analysis, and just sort of extrapolating based on movements of people, but we won't have real quantitative number to say, oh, it looks like this is a trend, this is a trend. Just because NEC works at a snail pace. We might not even know anything by Thursday. We might not even know anything really by Friday. I'm afraid we might not have anything, no winner by weekend. We're talking Monday, Tuesday next week. That's my prediction.
Thank you.
Wow.
Mr. Carter.
That's scary. That is scary.
And don't forget, tomorrow night is election night on Focus on Libra, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's tomorrow right here on Focus on Libra. Mr. Carter, you're closing.
Hey, Dennis, thank you for having me. And for the rest of the panelists, thank you for having a great discussion. Again, I hope any of you didn't feel offended. If you did, this is our election time. I will find you. We can drink beer over there. But without further ado, I think tomorrow we're going to have, contrary to some of the narrative out there, I think we're going to have a peaceful election. Yes, there might be some noise here and there, but I think for the majority of the overall of the election is going to be well conducted. I stated the reason why earlier. We have international observers in the country. We have each candidate has their own poll watchers, and I think there's going to be police presence in those areas to ensure that some of the fighting, the murder that we see doesn't happen again. But in addition to that, I think I said this earlier. One of the things that we're overlooking are the silent voters who are not following this whole crowd narrative that we're playing into. I think they're going to come out because I think they're resolved, but they're not people that come out and follow this crowd narrative.
Why?
The economy as a whole hasn't been great. Whether you're looking at it for the last 6 years or you're looking at it for the last 12 years, it hasn't been great. And I think Liberian people have seen that since the war has ended, economic mobility is lacking, self-actualization is lacking, and if they look around the region, they compare themselves to whether the Sierra Leone, the Ghana, the Nigeria, the Guinea, we are far at the lowest spectrum of the economic spectrum in our region, right? And I think they have seen a lot, and they are resolved in terms of removing this current regime, right, and replacing it with someone who they believe will be able to do something, even if there is, and I don't agree with it, even there's some kind of class system, but where you come out of college and you have some kind of economic mobility to be able to self-actualize in our country. So I believe Liberians are resolved on that aspect of it. As far as the voter in terms of how they're going to vote, how they're going to cast their vote, that is yet to be seen. And I think that's what I have a lot of doubts in terms of because the population we have is very illiterate. So being able to have people go to the polling station and cast a vote that is legitimate, that can be counted, will be something that will be a challenge. But overall, I think we're going to have a peaceful election, and I think there's going to be a lot of surprises, contrary to what we're talking about on this show.
Thank you, Victor. Gabriel, quickly. I don't like that when you say the voters are illiterate. I don't believe so. But my question to you is, you keep mentioning silent voters. We have not had silent voters since 2005. What's different this time around?
It's okay. So you see the crowd that is pulling up and here and there. I don't know if you guys talk to people in Liberia. There are a lot of people in
No, I said, what is different since 2005? Why do we have silent voters this year?
The reason why we have silent voter is because of the economic condition that we're in. Come on, I mean, I don't have to spell it out. The country hasn't gone anywhere. Every year we have a budget recast.
So why are people silent about that? Why are they not coming out?
They're silent about it because they are afraid. You see what happened, right? They're afraid that if they continue to do that, violence, violence. So I would rather keep quiet, go in the booth, and make my decision in there. So most of them are not following this crowd. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
And some of them are private in their voting selection.
Right.
Thank you.
So Cummings is going to pull these silent voters out of the.
I did not say that. I did not
say
that.
He didn't say that.
You did not hear me say Cummings. Right. Thank you.
Okay.
And there will be no violence in this election.
Thank you. Yes.
I hope so. You spoke already. Mr. Lassa, you're closing, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I predict that the vice president.
Energized.
Say that again.
Go ahead. You're closing.
Well, I said, Dennis, I predict that Vice President Boyka is going to win on the first round by a percentage of between 53 to 56%. I believe so. If the election is free and fair, that is void of what I think is a wild card there. If it is void of real, deliberate, and widespread voter intimidation, like what we saw in 2019 or something when they had armed men in the street. If they don't
That's
do that,
interesting. So let's say Boyka 53%.
between 53 and 56, where widespread.
With we are, I just want you to give few percentages for the top 4 or 5. So
no, I would like to stick to that. I think across, whether there is a second round or not, I think there should be at least a 10-point margin between Weah and Boyka. At least a 10-point
so Weah is 43. Cummings?
Cummings are probably going to retain 7% or underperform.
10%. And Gonglo?
5%.
Gonglo, the Manobo are going to vote for Gonglo, and the Mano people are about 8% of the population. I'll get Gonglo maybe 5 to 6%.
Okay, so 6. So we have 53, 43. I hope you do your math well. 43, 53, 7, 6, and the rest will be.
Well, yeah, you follow your own formula. That's not,
and the rest will be. I used to be a math teacher. Very good.
Okay. And I'm giving ranges in a way, so you can take the extreme. But look, overall, Liberians will have to ask themselves if, especially, oh my God, I can imagine that Liberians, patriotic Liberians who live in the diaspora, regardless of tribal affinity with Weah, will see what Weah has done in our country and have a tolerance to think that Weah deserves to be there again. Or if you are my friend, I'm going to revisit our relationship to be friend with you. Amen. If they make and set in a place, they kill auditors in a way and fashion that cannot be removed away from him. And he goes on radio in the church.
Stop threatening the voters.
Excuse me, man, why are you doing that? Okay. And say that they are girlfriend, boyfriends. And he can leave the country for 45 days to go watch his son playing game. If this is how diaspora Liberians feel, some feel that Liberians should be led while they are here sending their children to school, having the best of time. Oh my God, this is wrong. I appeal to Liberians to remember that under George Weah administration, we have Liberians in the street killing themselves from drug and kush and hitting the light pole with their heads and brutally killing people openly when we have not seen that in a long time. And they will arrest the corporates of the importation of drugs. They will arrest them and free them. And they will go where a murder will be committed against the former Chief Justice. And they will turn the case around her. And they lie around because they know that most of our people are not that informed and exploit that situation and misinform the population to say one of the persons among the corporates confessed. Today there's no confession. You see the case, there is no evidence at all until the Solicitor General had to go in the net at the Chamber of Justice to go bribe the jurors so they can allow on the Associate Justice, that he had to be fined and banned from going there, and that Jefferson Kochi can have a Franz Hamilton type episode where he's scheming to provide basis for voter intimidation. And Liberians in the diaspora feel that this is the best thing. I want my people home to vote against Weah and vote for Boyka. Now there's a final point. You asked Carter about the silent voters, and in the end he got a question, the answer right. He did struggle a little bit. And you asked him 3 times, Dennis, and I thought you did well. I have to acknowledge that. You asked him why the silent voters. He went around, and in the end he told you they're afraid. But that is something I would have given you readily because I know that. I know friends of mine who are really radical, militant, who have gone underground, who are in the shallows in Liberia. They are so afraid for their lives. They know what the government can do. And there are many. The silent voters are many. That doesn't mean they're going to vote for Cummings. I think their voting pattern is going to parallel the general voting pattern of probably even the turnout in the various rallies. I think it's going to correlate with that. If that's the case, Boyka is going to be the winner, as I have said. And I call on my people to go tomorrow and vote, not to be afraid. Go and vote and free yourselves We want to come home. We are your sons. We are your children and daughters and sons and daughters. We cannot come home and be under a weird administration where we'll be afraid, where we can be killed.
Thank
if
you,
we
sir.
change we'll come and change the country and improve a lot for yourselves and your children and your generation. Because we love you, but we doesn't. Because many
I didn't know
things
we're
are
making
Ghanaian.
political shouting here. I thought this was non-political.
So I ask my fellow Liberians to go out tomorrow and vote and cast their ballot and not be afraid. Thank you very much, Dennis, for the generosity of time.
Thank you, Mr. Sieh. You can close us.
Dennis, thank you. Great show tonight, gentlemen. The thing about election that I have been processing is that the voters in their majority tend to pick their candidate. Sometimes it's not more so about what the person has done. Let's look at John McCain. Look at his history. One would have thought he would have won. But what led to him losing? The political circumstances in America at the time. The Republican has taken the American to war. They were unhappy with the Republican Party. Obama had made sense at the time. And so they wanted change. They went with Obama. I can argue, not necessarily because of what Obama has done, but his life story as an individual and the way he conducted himself as a candidate was something comforting for Americans at the time. So we are going with this man, even though he's inexperienced. Joshua came to mind. All right. He played football. When we were playing football, you were not thinking about politics or whatsoever. After our war, when we wanted somebody, Liberian decided that, well, we're going with George Weah. They chose George Weah. George Weah is president today. Not necessarily because of what he done, but because of the circumstances that happened in the country at the time. So, well, we are going with George Weah. For an individual to be struggling to win an election in Liberia, let's look at Cummings, for example. Look at that man's life story, what he has achieved as a Liberian citizen. Liberians tomorrow can say, well, this man's story as an individual, his achievement is something that we can go with and they can elect. And the same thing with Tiawan Gongo. Look at how he has lived his life. Tomorrow, Liberian can say in the American, well, we're going with Tiawan Gongo this time. He will win. We'll give him credit. Today, we may not get Tiawan credit. Today, we may not get Cummings credit. We can blame him. We can blame Tiawan. We say everything about it. Sometimes the people pick their own leader based on the circumstances and maybe not necessarily what the person has done, but maybe that person appealed to them at a particular time. Sometimes it can be influenced by the circumstances. That is my observation. I can come from America today. I may not have done anything. Maybe all the people running in that place, they are all criminals. They say, this man is the man. I have not lived with them. They can vote me.
Yep.
The people choose their leaders based on circumstances, sometimes not necessarily because of what the person has done. That is what I believe. That is my closing. Thank you.
On that note, we close with our song that says, we are all Liberians. Tomorrow, go and vote, whoever you vote for. One thing is true, we are all Liberians, and we must do whatever it takes to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Have a good night, and God bless.
We are Liberians.